Hello and welcome to episode 85 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me, as always, is Neil.
Hi, Greg.
How you doing?
Yeah, not bad. You?
Yeah, I'm good. Before we get into that, Element Games. Go and get your, what are they releasing this week? Shadespire. Getting your Shadespire warbands for 20% off on pre-release week. I'm getting mine. That's for shizzle. And then, obviously, I mean...
Which ones are they this week? Are they the... Well, I've lost track of Shadespire. Which ones
the
are
Fire
they
Slayers,
this week?
the Duarden, and the Skaven.
Oh, right, yep.
Yeah, some fantastic models. So, yeah, you can go and get them, plus whatever else they're going to release. So we've just had all the Malign Important stuff drop. The Orlocks, are they on sale this week? They might be. They might be available, I don't know. No, I think they're pre-order this week as well. So if you want some Orlocks, I know some people are keen to look at a lot of the Necromunda stuff for Militia. And why not? Because they're fantastic kits, aren't they? Really
they are. I mean, I've looked at those very much for some conversions for Militia and bits and pieces, because I like the Gene Stealer Cult stuff.
Yeah.
But some of the heads you just can't really get away with, because you've got that ridge, haven't you, on the heads and
mutants,
stuff. But those
mutants
have got great conversion opportunities with the Orlocks. So
yeah, there's so much cool stuff. Even with all those gangs, you could just buy, like, for one unit of 30, you could just buy 3 different gang boxes, mix it all up,
just mix them up and bash them together.
Yeah, it'd be so cool. So yeah, you can go to Element Games. I just want to say a big thank you for everyone who goes to Element Games and uses the code or goes through the website. It does help. It comes and pays those bills. In which I've got one coming up actually for the yearly thing. So it all helps keep the show going. It's wonderful stuff. And the same goes for Patreon. So a big thank you for anyone who's supported Patreon at any point. And for those people who've just signed up or readjusted their things, you know, it means a lot. Even if you're only giving $1, all right, it doesn't sound much, but actually it's really cool to know that people think this is worth $1 a month. All right, it's quite a hard feeling. It's one of those things you don't think about until you do something like this, how much it will kind of like speak out to you. But it's really cool. So, yeah, and keep an eye on that, because tried to get some stuff signed, didn't have quite the authors there that I thought, but we're going to start trying to get some bits and pieces out on the Patreon. So that'll be good.
Yes, and with that as well, I've worked out, you remember last show we spoke about the doing some live streams and bits and pieces.
Yeah.
While I was painting. So what I'm going to be doing is going to be doing some more live streams. However, I'm going to do them so they're live, but I'm not going to do them so you can then review them on Instagram. Because, you know, if you do a live stream, it stays up for 24 hours. I'm going to do it so that it's only live, and then the saved file that will be the recording of that live stream. I'll make available to the Patreon users.
Awesome.
But the way I'm going to do the live stream is going to be pretty much talking about a technique and painting something relatively from start to finish. So the first one I'm going to do is some non-metallic metals on a bit of the New Dawn model. So I'm going to take apart the leg, maybe do an hour or two where I just basically paint away, and as I'm painting, just talk through what I'm doing, what colours I'm using, what I'm thinking about while I'm painting, those sort of things. Just so if anyone wants to watch it back, the best way of doing that would then be going through the Patreon.
Awesome sauce. And just to kind of make, you know, it's not only for people at the top level of painting either. Sometimes it's amazing what you pick up. You think, I can't do that, but actually that one thing that person does will help a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is, obviously there's a level of brush control and skill in a lot of things. Maybe I do, but sometimes it's the thought process. And it's the thinking about it first. So if someone even watched it, oh, okay, I see why he's put that there. I see how he's done that. That could unlock a lot more painting skill or better painting just from knowing the thought process. Because so much of the stuff we learn with painting is just understanding the theory or understanding how, why, and then things just sort of work from that point onwards.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll look forward to looking at that myself, I think. Awesome. Right. Before we jump, this is going to be an episode about the Heresy Weekender, as you probably expect. There's quite a considerable amount to chat about. But just before we get into that, I suppose your week was mainly panic finishing your model.
It was panic finishing the model up until, even the night of the weekend, or I was doing a bit on that Friday night where we're all in the hotel. And since then, we've done the competition, which I won a silver with. And since then, I've sort of gone into lots of bits and pieces, but I'm currently painting Corax's wings.
All right, cool. That's good.
My next. I've made a list of things that I need to get done. So it's finished. First thing is finish Corax, and the next thing is video on plinths, and the next thing is live stream non-metallic metals. So you can see how far down it will take me until I get roughly around to doing the live stream, but hopefully it will be a few days.
Sure, excellent. Just before I do mine, there is something I forgot to mention. I want to mention it at the start and at the finish because it's really cool. So there's a guy. People might know him as a White Wolf on various forums, and what he does at the Heresy, all the weekenders he goes to, pretty much, is he asks GW for stuff to give to charity. So they only support a few different charities, but they help him out, and it's for there we go. It's a charity that help families of disabled children in the Swindon area. So they provide some money so they can have some, like, a day off, I think, and help that kind of important stuff that people forget, that sometimes you just need to give parents a bit of a rest when they've got a demanding role in that. And what he does is he takes them and he puts them up for a raffle. Now the cool thing is you can only buy one ticket and it's £10. So the person with all the money is not going to win this, Well, they might do, but you've got exactly the same chance as everyone else. And that's for anyone around the world. I think I've won on one of these before. So he's got a built and painted Rogel Dawn and Constantine Valdor, painted by Jason Fox, who's a friend of his. They got a 1 metre by 3 metre display poster of Wolfsbane, so those hanging ones. It's been signed by Neil Roberts and Guy Haley, and all the other authors as well. They got a Wolfsbane autographed by an entire Black Library author team who were at the Weekender. I think that might be it. You never know. Sometimes he finds a little bit extra. I might see what I've got. I'll have to dig through. So, yep, I'll put the link in the show notes. And if you want to go and win one of those cool prizes and support charity, then you can do that. Oh, that's pretty cool. So, yeah. And then I'll get back to what I was been up to, which basically wasn't a huge amount. So, yeah, you were saying you were busy painting the Friday night at the Weekender. I saw you twice, yes. I think, introduce you to the fiancé very briefly. Yes. And then you got excited because Ken was there.
Yes,
who we'll talk about later. But yeah, in the build-up, I didn't have a huge amount of time, and I'm at that stage where I need to get, I need to start finding models to go and sort out my Age of Sigmar stuff, and I'm like in that little weird bit, and I'm like, you know what, I've got a Shadespire warband to paint. Let's paint them. I've actually thought, because I'm doing the CK Studios, I was having a think about my wolves. And I'm like, you know what? I haven't done a lot with my Space Wolves. And I've got quite a few vehicles to paint. And I'm seriously just thinking I'm going to start them again once I've airbrushed. Because then they're all going to be...
Yeah, there's the whole thing of then having it all unified, isn't it? Having everything looking the same. And
I'll probably change the colour scheme and whatever, and I'll do so. I want them to look good, but I don't want it to take loads of time. So you know what? Waiting those few months till May, doing that, and then just hitting all the vehicles and the troops, it's going to be quicker still than trying to crack on with it now. So I want to wait till I've got the skills with the airbrush, and then I'll figure out exactly what I'm doing from there, I think. But I need to do it because I want to expand out my gaming. Because the Mechanicum were great, but I really want to get on with some Wolves now. It's been a year since we got the book. I haven't done anything. It's really bad. But we're...
I think the airbrush, the whole going on the airbrush course thing does help because suddenly then you've got a new driver that you feel a bit more confident with what you're doing, and then you've got something a bit more exciting to try and like play around with some new techniques and. You know,
yeah. Also, I mean,
when you're doing the same scheme over and over again, it can get a bit tedious. At least you've got something else to play with.
I painted 3.5 hours over a couple of nights ago, and I've got cloaks and loincloths on these skeletons, and not all of them have both. And in 3.5 hours, I didn't even paint all them. Like,
Wow.
It's just kind of depressing because that's the speed I paint. And I'm like, you know what? Even if I really do a basic airbrush job, I'm just going to get paint on models so much quicker.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. No, I think I was playing around with mine the other day because the way I did core axis wings was I've given them like a bit of a pre-shade so I can hit the blends all in the same place.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing how quickly you can do something like that and how effective it is versus toiling away for hours and hours and then, almost giving up the will to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
Halfway through.
So, and we've got noticed that the people we're trying to buy a house off have now secured a house. So, and the people they're not in a chain. So, I'm like, do I really want to go and get loads of stuff out and then we're going to have to pack it all away and move it in
you're in that
funny
position as well, aren't you?
Yeah, there's a couple of months, and then I'm going to have a space dedicated to do this. So you know what? Again, for that few months, actually, and for what I can achieve in that time with the limitations I've got, it's worth waiting. So
definitely,
that's what I'm doing, which is a bit, I've got some Shadespire warbands to paint, and there's 2 more going to be coming soon. So, I've always got something to paint, and what I can do now is start thinking about potential colours for Space Wolves. If I want to actually go and do the kind of storm grey, or if I want to actually do something slightly different.
What would you, if you were to do something different, what do you think you'd do?
Well, I don't know, because at the moment I've got that quartered scheme, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do the quartered scheme. I like it. If I could paint quicker, I would want to do it. But it just takes up time, and I don't want to be faffing around on individual models.
The problem with the quartered scheme is that's a lot of brushwork, isn't it? To get it to look crisp and
and it was cool, and I quite liked it. And I'm kind of glad I tried it. I say if I could work quickly, I'd do a Howling Griffin's army for my Primaris, But I'd do something like that because I think they look amazing quartered. But now I kind of fell out of love of doing the Iron Warriors. I always had that little inkling to do Iron Warriors. I'm sitting there thinking something like a Steel Walls kind of colour, so maybe in metallics.
Oh, that could be quite cool. I don't think I've ever seen many metallic wolves.
No. So, who knows? I mean, that's just throwing up some ideas. I definitely want them to look slightly different than just that storm grey. And I know everyone hits a slightly different colour grey, but I do want them to stand out a little bit. And I was thinking of things like, maybe just having them grey, but having like the whole left arm red up to the elbow, like to denote their leader or something like that. There's little things.
I do like the grey and red. I think they're quite powerful colours together.
But
it's getting it right, though, isn't it? That's the key.
Yeah. But I'll have a play around. I'll get on the old Bolter and Chainsaw Space Marine Painter and see kind of what ideas I can come up with. It's just things like, that red up to the shoulder, is that not just a bit Crimson Fisty? If you do it on both, is it too much? You've got to get it right. It could literally be just picking out a shoulder pad here and there. A knee pad as well as shoulder pads, things like that. But again, it's getting that balance right, I think, which is not easy sometimes.
Definitely.
But we'll see. Got loads of time. I'll make up some ideas. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. The only thing I really kind of wanted to touch on, and this has been a really tough call, as to how much we talk about stuff that's been going on online over the last week and a half. But I think I don't want to go into specifics. So I think some people are expecting me to talk about it, or us to talk about it, particularly me, because the way I can be, I suppose. But we're going to get into the weekend of stuff. But the Varagear Terminators, the issues we talked about, and we've talked about these models as maybe not being our favourites, but things like the pistol grips are, were errors that needed to be sorted. And turns out that they were sorted, fixed. It's fine, you know.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
It was missed at least 2 points, but mistakes happen, and it's an easy fix. And Forge World are very good at fixing those things, and that's cool. The kind of vitriol that's still going on around them, right? It's one of those things. I've got no problem with being critical, and you know what? For £60, I'm a bit. For £60, it's a tough sell for me to buy them. I might buy them, and I might cut them in half and use the top halves on other Terminators. They seem to be selling quite a few at the Weekender, so some people are obviously purchasing them. When you looked at the resin, I know you said this as well, the people complaining about the heads on them, I think the heads are stunning on them. I think they're beautiful, particularly the main guy with all the hair.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest plus of them was the heads. Now, I wasn't too keen on the big knotwork, and I wasn't too keen on the fur.
Yep.
But they're two things that I feel as though I could fix if I bought them. So, you know, I'd very easily be able to scratch off the knotwork and replace it with something else, and all the fur as well. So the heads, often I look at the heads as the key part of the model. So if I like the heads on something, that pretty much sells it to me. And then everything else is fixable, changeable. I mean, as an example, Andy Wardle bought Dawn. He's changed the head on Dawn. You know, he's bought a Horus head, chopped the hair off Dawn and put it onto Horus. It looks amazing.
Yeah, I saw that.
But not many people would be turning around and saying, "Oh, I don't like that Dawn head's awful." You know, but you know, you change it. You know, chop it, change it, but make it different.
But also, like for me, the big thing about the Varigir is their weapon loadout. And if I'm going to spend £60 on those models, how much am I going to have to spend to give them the weapons I want? You know, how much work am I going to have to do to give them? And that's irrelevant of how well they're done, or how well you think they're done or not done, or errors you think there are. But every time a model comes out, some people will like it, some people won't. These have divided opinion, you know, or had more of an uproar than most. It's the way it's done online. So the pistol grip, the pistols for the Grey Hunters, the Grey Slayers. Again, we've had this thing. We've had questions asked of Forge World, who said no, that you know they're designed that way. A fake email going around saying that Forge World are going to exchange all of them for you if you wish, which is confirmed as fake by Forge World staff. People raging at each other online. And frankly, for the last week or so, I found the Facebook groups and everything not a fun place to be. And I just think, come on, boys, and girls, let's chill out a little bit here. We've always said here, you know, we try and be as honest as possible here. If you've got a problem, let Forge World know. Send them an email, right? Because if they get thousands of emails saying we don't like these, you know, and no one's buying them, then they're going to see there's an issue. If people are buying them and no one's physically telling them, they're aware of what goes on online, but they're also aware that chat rooms, forums and Facebook groups and Twitter is not a place where you get reasoned people talking. It's reasoned people, but they're not talking in a reasoned way half the time. So they're not going to just go, oh yeah, everyone's shouting about something, we'll change it. Because frankly, everyone shouts about everything. You know, everyone shouted about how bad some of the Primarchs were at various points, which just seems crazy to me, you know. And I know a lot of the listeners who listen to this show aren't necessarily the people who are bad at this kind of thing. You know, tend to be a little bit more measured, I think, maybe because of the way we do the show, when we appeal to that a little bit more. But I don't know. This is the thing, I don't even know, I could go off, but that does no good, again. It does no good. Right? The Space Wolf release has been weaker than most other releases. I think that's fair to say. Okay, there are still lots of aspects of those releases that I really love. Really love. And when it gets to the level of personal attacks against a sculptor, right, there's no need for that. Right? People, you know, even if it's the level of people saying, oh, this bloke's rubbish, he can't sculpt, well, I can assure you that Forge World don't employ people who can't sculpt. I think this guy's done some other stuff which is very, very good. And even if something comes out, it's not just the sculptor; it's got to be okayed along a couple of lines as well. So it's just that kind of it's a community we try and build up, and actually, frankly, it's a community that I wouldn't have told anyone to come and join for last week. I would have said, just hold your hoss. Let everything chill out, because you're going to come on, you're going to find a place where you don't want to be. And when you put on top of that, the issues around the Weekender, where, something was said at the Weekender, people will have seen Forge World's apology that they put out, and people were asking questions. Tony made a joke in one of the seminars, and apologised, joke, but kind of said, "Oh, sorry," straight away. It was intended as a joke, a light-hearted joke. Someone's reported it, maybe taking it slightly out of context. I know 2 people in that seminar who actually said, "You know what? It wasn't the wisest thing," but Tony's apologised. Kind of matter done, And yet on both sides, you've got someone saying Tony should leave the company. I've seen that written down. And then on the other side, you've got people saying, "Oh, this news aggregator should whatever," and whoa. People are allowed to have an opinion about what was said. And as I say, I sat there with people who were like, if that was me in my job talking to the public, then I would have got severely told off for it. And I think it's hard when it's like that, because the barriers are broken down a bit more. And I honestly don't believe that Tony is anyway prejudiced like that. But these things can happen. Apologise, move on. Let's get on with life.
Yeah, completely.
I think we probably should leave it there, because otherwise we'll go on and on and on. It's just, we'll
get ourselves in trouble.
It's easy. It's very easy behind the computer screen. We all know it. We've seen the keyboard warriors and everything else. It's just very easy to forget there are real humans behind this. And people saying this bloke should be sacked, this bloke should be gone, he can't effing do this, and then, if he has effing been sacked or quit, if he's quit, it's his own fault, can't he take a bit of criticism? Well, not when it's that personal. Why would you want to if he can go and do another job somewhere else? You can criticise something without criticising the person doing it, because I can assure you he can sculpt. I still yet to have seen many first sculpts by non-companies, not put out by companies, that have been any good, that replace the Varagear. Not that I'm saying the Varagear ones are perfect, but I still haven't seen one where I think, oh yeah, no, I'd go and buy that. So, whatever. Anyway, we should move on. You got anything else to add before we jump into the Weekender?
No, everything I've got to talk about is about the Weekender.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll break there, we'll come back, and we'll talk about all the juicy releases. We're coming back to talk about all the crazy new stuff. And I actually saw someone commenting today, because we're releasing it. We're recording the Friday that we got the first of the new releases. The transfers came out today, and something else I can't remember. Others are re-releasing something. The
Necromunda Hide,
Necromunda,
Bounty Hunters came out.
Yeah. So we're at the start of that cycle where we know everything that's coming after a Weekender.
Yes, and great times where we can have weeks and weeks of going, seen this.
It's like buying your own Christmas present and giving it to your other half to wrap.
Yes,
which is a bit bittersweet, really. But so I know someone was laughing at me for my predictions at the start of last episode. I did change a couple at the end. Fully didn't expect that Dawn video to come out before the event, and as soon as he did, it was like, yeah, Valdor's coming. Dawn. What do you think, Dawn?
Model-wise, or...
Yeah, model-wise.
Okay, well, first off, model-wise, I think it's amazing. I think Sam's done an amazing pose. One of my favourite Primarchs. I just love the way he's sort of standing there. Paint job, again, Pedro, I believe, painted that one.
Yeah, I think so.
Knocked it out of the park, paint job wise. I mean, literally jaw-dropping paint job, which for me is sometimes a bit of a letdown. I like it when there's a bit of a shanky paint job because I think, I could do that a bit better, and I then want to go and paint it. So when it's got a really good paint job, it sort of puts me off a bit. So, but yeah, paint job amazing, pose amazing. Base quite simple, quite plain, but that doesn't really bother me too much because that means he's on a nice level platform, which means you can do your own thing.
Yeah.
Some of the Primarchs, because they're on rubble and things, their feet are at funny angles, and if you want to then put them on a different base, it's very tricky.
Have you seen someone's done? I think it's they made their own Chaos thing. And they've taken Adorn and made him a statue and have put him underneath the feet of this Chaos thing.
Yes. Yeah. Siege Studios did that.
Yeah. That's an expensive piece of base decoration, isn't it?
It's raising bases to a new level, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, was it you was talking about Pedro being disappointed? So it's a non-metallic metal paint job, which I don't think a lot of people got.
Yes.
It's a fantastic paint job. Apparently, when he started the head, he then realised that the head was going to be facing a slightly different angle, and so it's ever so slightly off the same line.
The lighting.
Yeah, I didn't even notice.
I must admit, the one thing I didn't do, which I wish I had, because Pedro had him out for a while, was actually pick the actual model up and actually, look at him outside of the cabinet, because you do really get a good feel for them once you actually look at them, like, in your hand. But, paint job wise, absolutely amazing job.
Yeah. So if anyone sees Sam Egan, you have to ask him where Dawn's moustache is. For all this craziness. Again, this is just another silly thing that I just don't get. Dawn has never had a moustache, never been written with one, never been pictured with one. There's a piece of fan art that a lot of people like where he's got a moustache. So cool. If you want to make a moustache for Dawn, crack on. No one's going to stop you, and it could look quite cool. But don't complain or expect Forge World to put one on there when it was never going to be on there. People going, where's his moustache?
Yes.
Like, genuinely are like, oh, where is it? It's like, well, it's like Russ's beard. It's exactly the same. So Neil Wiley was putting a lot of pressure, along with me, on Sam to make a Primarch facial hair expansion kit. So you can put your own moustache on Dawn or facial hair on Russ or whatever you want, really. So, who knows? Who knows if that will happen? But, I agree with you. He said that they tried a couple of poses with him in action and it just wasn't working. And if you're going to have we've got a handful of Primarchs in fairly static poses. If anyone's going to be in the most static of poses, is going to be Dawn. Like the Imperial Fists, they don't just stand on the wall; they are the wall. That is the whole point of them. They are the last wall, and the absolute "you are not passing me" pose. Just turn around, go home, don't even bother. Is absolutely perfect. Someone on Twitter also put up his sword next to various models because there was issues. People thought his chainsaw wasn't big enough. It's bigger than a Space Marine, so quite frankly,
when your weapon's as big as a Space Marine, do you need a bigger weapon?
You need a bigger weapon, it just makes you wonder sometimes. But yeah, the model's fantastic. I like the way Sam gave him his own hair, which is good. But yeah, no, it is stunning. It is absolutely stunning. I think he's most pleased with it. Which is
it's literally. We always say this, but I think the Primarch models do get better with everyone they've released, and this is keeping that level up there massively.
I still think Ferris is best.
Well, I still love Ferris, but you know what? There's so much of them that is sort of echoing through them now, and I've got to say, I do think the Dawn model is just absolutely stunning. And, maybe it helps that it's in a non-metallic paint job as well. That for me, that really shows off the model, makes it look really impressive. But it just, it looks like it might be a bit of a painter's model as well, because there's lots of nice flat plated areas to get some nice transitions in on. I can't see many people not liking it.
No, it's fantastic. And we saw people putting mock-ups, like photoshopping mock-ups of him in black armour, and morning armour and things like that. You can do a lot with that as well. Absolutely fantastic. Okie dokie. Valdor. Did you have a good look at Valdor?
I did. Well, I had a good look at the actual model because I bought. Well, I set off on the. Because you know they opened up on the Friday night for sales, which I still think is one of their best additions to the Weekender. And I walked past early and saw the stuff for sale. I think I messaged you at the time, but I think your phone had run out of battery.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, okay, Dawn, Valdor, I don't really need to buy either of these. I might buy myself the Shield Captain just so I've got, that sort of event model sort of thing sorted. And then queued up for registration, walked past the sales stand for registration and ended up with a handful of Valdor, Dawn and the Shield Captain. So just couldn't resist. Literally, the hype once you're there and everyone's like, have you seen this? Have you seen that? I had to go and buy one. So the first model I opened was Valdor. And I opened him up in the hotel room. And he's an absolutely stunning model. So much detail all over him. In some ways, not so much a painter's model like Dawn, I would say. Right. But literally an absolutely stunning sculpt.
Yeah, I don't think the photos can do him justice. I think that's part of the problem again with that model is like it does look busy on the official photo.
Yes, and the official photo, because he's in true metallics, and I'm trying to remember the guy, the painter's name, but he basically was bemoaning the fact that he had to do him in metallics because he wanted to do him on metallics, but was told, obviously, no, you've got to do this, which is understandable. They have ways they want it to look, so they'll say no, it's got to be done this way. But, again, just amazing model. I just love all the details. I know some people weren't too keen on the big sort of skull, sort of beast on his shoulder.
Yep.
But I actually quite like that. I thought it looks really, really cool. I know that some people spoke about changing it and stuff, but again, if you wanted to do that, I think knock yourself out. But for me, it looked absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, there's some people already doing that as well.
Yes, definitely.
I've seen some really good ones, Carl. I think John Moggy McGee's one was up. Fantastic. And a lot of people want that base as well. The advantage of that, it's all book 7, is they're all based on Prospero. So a lot of people were jumping on that base for stuff for their Space Wolves or Thousand Suns, which is quite cool as well. You mentioned the Shield Captain. What do you think of that guy?
Well, I haven't opened him. Right. He looked all right. He looked pretty good. I was, for me, he looks like a decent sort of sculpt. I think we're getting so many custodes at the moment that they're all starting to look a little bit similar.
Well, they will, won't they? Because they're almost all in exactly the same armour.
Exactly. So in some ways, I think it was cool. I wanted to have one, so I bought one. But, if someone said to me, you need to make a Shield Captain, I'd be like, yeah, give me some plastics. I'll knot one together. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be thinking, I must buy that one, that resin one.
But they are cool. Amazing. Both of the options we got now.
Very Tribune. Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, Tribune and the Shield Captain are very cool options. That's groovy. Space Wolf upgrade kits we talked about. You like the leather masks on the Grey Slayers?
I'm not too keen on the leather masks. I like the bondage look.
I like
them. But the other version, the ones I think the dudes with the shields, don't they? Yeah. They're more sort of standard heads. I thought they looked amazing.
So I was talking to someone who's like, I don't want all my dudes, and I'm like, well, you don't have to. You can buy a pack and separate them amongst more than one squad. And that's the beauty of these upgrade kits. Yeah, if you're going to have lots of combat shields, you're going to use lots of combat shields, which I think are cool. If you don't like those pistols, cool, you don't have to use those pistols. I quite like them. I think it's a bit funky. And I like the headgear as well. So I will possibly use more than others would. But that's the beauty. Is even if you have one or two of them dotted around an army, it would stand out and make it look quite cool. So
yeah, definitely.
Yep. And then we got the custodian upgrade spears. These sold out pretty quick as well.
Yeah, I thought. I mean, they're a very simple thing, aren't they? But I thought they're, adds a lot of flavour.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the House Veroni transfers are already out, so that's quite cool. It's just more and more options for transfers now. You're getting to the point where it's hard not to have something that you wouldn't mind putting on your army.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And the beauty is actually you can, we've talked about trading the transfers that people don't use. And what you can really do is you can jump around from different. You can jump around different. What was I going to say? It's gone. My mind's gone. It's good, isn't it? You can take.
Jump around different brands.
One very small bit, yeah. So you can have, say, House Veroni. You might like one small circular symbol, say, out off the top of my head, and there's 10 of them out on that page. You find someone who's not using them. Cool. I actually want those 10, and I also want these 10 from this one for the larger symbols, and because it doesn't have to be the same all the time. They can be linked but without being the same, and so you can create your own thing from the bits that other people's don't use really easily. Which is, again, it's fantastic to see that we have all that option, and they don't seem like they're going to stop anytime soon. So that's cool as far as I'm concerned. What we'll do now is that's all the stuff they had for sale. We'll move on to the stuff they previewed and talk a little bit. There'll be a couple of bits in here, but we're going to leave like the Malevolence chat till we talk about that. We're just going to go through what they showed off. So we'll start with the Deradeo missile racks. the morning the Purvey's was out, the one we've seen for 2 years or whatever, and everyone was like, has it changed? I can't remember. It's been like 8 months since I've seen it last. Is it still exactly the same? And Will was like, yes, it's exactly the same. But we've got this this Deradeo missile rack, and allegedly they're looking at selling them as a pack of 2. So that'll be good. Finally get that Purvey's out. And the missile rack looks awesome. It's a anti-air missile rack. Don't know what the missiles are going to be like yet. But typical Will, he's designed it so that it can be like removed off that and turned upside down and put on planes. So if they sell multiple packs, they might be able to add some new missiles to some planes.
Clever.
Will's so very good at that. Kind of the king of that, really. So, yeah, I think that looks fantastic, don't you?
It does, yeah. I mean, I must admit, I saw those quite late in the day when they came out, and I remember going, has everyone seen these? Everyone was like, yeah, we've seen them. It's amazing how quick we go from amazing new stuff to, seen it.
Yeah, and don't care. That is a problem with us, isn't it? It is our problem, but we do do it so quickly. And we start to expect everything to be that good as well. So, yeah, that's the missile racks. Alongside that, we had the Aurochs. This is the Solar Auxilia Militia Troop Carrier. The little thing that was painted. What do you think of that one?
I thought it was amazing. I thought it looks brilliant. I was surprised how small it was when I saw it in the flesh. But it's a really, really cool little vehicle. So I can see a lot of people having those. Yeah,
I think they were talking about like 12 people carrier. So, it's not much bigger than a Chimera, which fits. But it fits. It fits the Solar Auxilia very well. I kind of like it. I think it's kind of cool. Be interested to see exactly how it's done when it comes out. But yeah, it was cool. It was quite funny because I wasn't in the new model seminar. I was like, stuff it, it's all going to be up on everywhere soon. So I was talking to Sam.
It's the one problem. Warhammer community literally drop it, don't they?
And we'll discuss some of that later. And it's understandable, and I understand why, but we'll discuss that. So I was talking to Sam, and then I just finished talking to him and see Giuseppe moving models into cabinets. I was like, ooh, what's this? Ooh, what's this? So the Aurochs was one of them. The other one was the Termite, and this caused a lot of excitement. This is fantastic. So cool.
So I was in the new model seminar, which, is one of my favourite bits. I did like, obviously, Tony's doing his usual, putting the pictures up on the screen. And it comes up, and I went, wow, that looks amazing. And I remember, I think because it was painted in Mechanicum colours, I remember thinking, another cool Mechanicum vehicle. when you don't have a Mechanicum army, whatever. And then obviously when he mentioned that it was for Astartes, I literally, I think I lost it. I was like, that's amazing. It's such a cool vehicle. And I love the way the rules for it. I love the way they're going to, it can be used. I can see them being very popular.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, there's those old timers who remember, the Epic and stuff like that. And then there's those people who just think it looks amazing. Yeah, and the rules look cool, essentially deep striking with some funky stuff in there. And
upside down drop pods, aren't they?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And again, it's Will's designed it. So I remember immediately the photos put up, and people were like, "Oh, it's got guns on it; they'll get ripped off." And it's like, come on, have some faith. It's got 6 panels. 4 of them are covered. 2 of them have got the guns up. So whichever side on top, those guns automatically come out. But when you look inside it, because of course, the door's open and whatever, it's got the space for those guns is even moulded on the inside and all that. It's done well, and Will does that with his vehicles.
Will is very good at that. He doesn't muck about, does he, when he designs vehicles and cool stuff?
No, and they look like they could work in the physics of the universe. And the best thing was, so he was, I think it was the Adeptus Titanicus seminar. He was, well, not Adeptus Titanicus, sorry, the Titan seminar. He was supposed to be in it, and he wasn't. And they came running out to get him, and Giuseppe just stood over and took his place and was like, "Oh yeah, and all the guns come off and they're magnetized and you can just swap them out like this," because he'd been watching Will do it for ages. But again, typically, all the magnet holes are there. It's just like bosh, 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 and Will's just got like a load of weapons in his hand. He's just popping them off, popping the new one on. It's fantastic. It looks so good.
It does. I mean, I must admit, it was. I remember seeing it and I just thinking, wow, it's amazing. But then I walked into the studio and then, it's a lot smaller than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
when Tony put the picture up, I was like, wow, that looks massive. And then seeing it's quite cool because it's a lot smaller, so you can see it being a lot more usable.
All the vehicles in Warhammer are smaller than they should be. In fact, there's a picture in Deathfire where Primarchs are standing in front of probably a Stormbird. I'm trying to remember now. And people are like, "Oh, that's way bigger than a Stormbird." And I'm like, well, I don't think it's way bigger because the angle you're looking at it at. But also, that is the smallest Stormbird, and it's still too small, It's like the vehicle scale in 40K has never been right, and it never will be, because the vehicles will be huge. So, you got to get over that. But yeah, that was cool. And they'd made the little tile for the termite to show how it went above ground. And I think they're making a one coming out the ground as well for display, which will be awesome. And then on that tile, we also had the old school land speeder updated.
Yes, now that got the biggest cheer in the seminar.
Again, I've seen people go, "I don't get it," and I think there's a huge divide. And it's not, it's not straight down the middle. There are people on both sides of this who have different opinions, but a lot of old school players were really chuffed for this, and a lot of new ones are like, it doesn't look right. There's a bit of nostalgia going on with this model.
I love it, and for me, it's what I've been waiting for a land speeder.
Is it?
Because that's what I remember. And I said, I could have a couple of land speeders now in my Night Lords.
You're very old, that's why.
Model. Well, it's very old, and I just think that's why I love Heresy, because I love the retro stuff. I love stuff looking cool. Looking different.
I'm not like, I don't mind it. I'd prefer something with a cover over the front personally, not because I think it doesn't work or anything like that, just because I prefer something with the cover over the front. But yeah, it will sell shed loads just because of the age of what it's representing.
Of course, yeah.
As simple as that, nostalgia sells. People know that, and it is cool as well. Really cool. Did you see the Dreadnought upgrade? The armor plates kit.
A Dreadnought
So
upgrade.
Will had it out. I didn't actually see this, but they're talking about having a kit for extra armor on Contempt Dreadnoughts. And the idea being that you spread it out.
No, I didn't see that. No,
it was one of those things. I don't know if it was just talked about or shown or what, because I never really saw it I didn't find out about it until later.
But it wasn't in the new model seminar.
No, but it's one of those things where they're not sure if they're going to do it. So, and this has happened with a few of Will's bits. He seems quite prolific in what he does, and he kind of has these cool ideas. And I'm sure there are kind of aspects of what he's trying to do are in the book, but we've already got so many dreadnoughts and stuff like that maybe it's like we can't do all of that. Again, we look at the Purveyors has been sat there for 2 years, and we've known about Myrmidon upgrade kits for weapon sprues have been a concept and idea, or Tony said that they've kind of done it, but can't agree a price, and that was the first Warhammer Fest, so that's almost 2 years ago.
Definitely.
So some of these things do get dropped by the wayside, which is unfortunate, because I think sometimes they're like, well, it'll be priced too high, and I'm like, but we will pay. I think it was Andy Hoare. I think it was Andy Hoare. It was definitely someone near the Necromunda area. And someone was talking about price models, and he said, I've been talking to someone today who's bought the Forge World jet bikes for Custodes and the Plastic Games Workshop jet bikes, and is cutting the front end off of each and gluing the plastic ones onto the resin ones.
I've seen those models on Instagram.
Oh, okay, cool. And the quote was like, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but at the point someone does that, and I hear someone saying this hobby's too expensive, I think it's obviously not.
Yes. Yeah, no, and I've got a friend who's his before the resin jet bikes came out, how Samuel had the only sort of like jet bike model. He had 6 of them because he was going to convert all of his Emperor's Children onto jet bikes, and like that style, that's the way I'm going to do them.
I've done
buy
similar
6 of them, chop them up. And it's just a case of, well, clearly, it's not about the cost of it; it's about what you want at the end of the day.
Yeah, and people do this. It's not as rare as you think it is sometimes. But
as I said earlier, Andy Wardle has bought a Horus model for the head.
Yes, absolutely. And those kind of things happen. I've done some crazy stuff, but never anything like that bad. But I've spent considerable amount on like trying to get one unit right. It does happen. You make your choices, don't you? You choose where you spend the money.
Exactly.
We had an Acros Scoria. What do you think of this bad boy?
Now, he's pretty amazing. I must admit. I
didn't even ask.
It's difficult to see him in the picture because
the
there's so much going on with the base, and he's such a big model. But I mean, I think when we see a painted version, when we can see him in the flesh really properly, wow, that's going to be quite a piece. I think.
So you didn't go and look at the model in the cabinet?
Well, I looked at the model in the cabinet, but I'm referring to like when you sort of. When you get it out of the box, it's all in bits, and you build it for yourself. You get a much better feeling for what it's like, and amazing looking model. I think it's going to be some amazing paint jobs done on it, and I think it's quite cool the way Tony was talking about it in the seminar. I was like, this is he showed the picture out of the book, which was just the was it Rachel? Or someone
I think it was Rachel. Yeah.
And it was a case of this is what he looks like, and it showed a picture of just his head. But when you see the body, it's quite sort of a wow moment, isn't it? It's huge, absolutely huge. Big, fantastic looking model.
I took a photo of it without thinking about it in front of the resin termite behind it, so it kind of there's a lot of grey behind it. But even then, like zooming in on the model, like the legs are fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of rubble going on, but actually. The detail on the models are really awesome. There's going to be a lot of them sold, quite simply.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, definitely.
Quite simply. And it is a fantastic, fantastic model. And it also helps that at the moment he's pretty damn over the top. So, yes. It makes that quite fun. That's cool. And then the final thing we really saw, as far as I recall, was the Dreadnought Drop Pod. So
because that was on the Sunday, wasn't it? Yeah.
So this was a redesign. This is the guy, I can never remember his name. He's come over. He used to work for the team that look after the dioramas in the studio, in the Warhammer World thing. He used to work for them under James Karch, I believe. And then he's come in and he did all the doors, or a load of the recent doors, and now he's done this. Basically, the Dreadnought drop pod is a little bit taller. You can now fit a Contemptor in it. You can't fit a Leviathan in it. As much as anything, that's the base. It's not going to let you do it. So, you know.
And it looks crisp. It
fits together better. When the doors open, they lie flat on the floor. The hinge has been completely redesigned to be a lot sturdier. And there's subtle redesigns around it as well, just to make it look better. But it looks like a good piece of kit, and we're going to be a few months off getting them, but they're going to sell. I wouldn't be surprised if they just sell out, that first run.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Because there's a lot of people been waiting for these. And, the fact it is a much better kit than it used to be is really good.
Yeah. Completely.
But yeah, and it's got all the magnet holes all pre-done again. I mean, that's the beauty of CAD, isn't it, I suppose? That you can just go, I need magnet hole size 3. Plop, plop, plop.
Yeah.
There's 3 of them.
Done.
Yeah. And it looks fantastic. Absolutely love it. Really cool. And it was great to just kind of, such a weighty piece of resin as well. But yeah, they're going to sell loads of them. And if you've got a Leviathan, you just have to nominate which way you're facing when you're inside it. It's not particularly difficult. You can get around it. Or just don't keep drop podding Leviathans, and make everyone's day a little bit nicer.
Yes.
I think it was Will. I think
maybe the start of a rule rewrite. Oh yeah, no, they now can't go in drop pods.
I was talking to Will, and he was talking about a couple of things that he'd done, and he's like, I just get really disappointed when I see like Mortis Dreads with double carries like on every other table, because they're not supposed to be that common, and it's difficult because then you might end up putting restrictions in, particularly now once you've sold them, that then people are like, I can't use my models, which isn't always the best way. But I understand what he means. But the problem is there's always that middle ground you want to be hitting, because people want a game. So it's all good. And then they showed us pictures without models of the Ordinatus Mole. So you were in there. What did they say about this? Can you remember?
What Tony said about it, or the team said about it? They referred it, obviously, that it's a similar thing to the Turbonite. Yeah. Obviously, the mechanic conversion a lot bigger. They said it was huge.
It is
I can't remember them saying much more than that.
So that frame is the same as the Ordinatus. Which
yes, so it's going to be a very, very big model.
Yeah, so you have to turn that sideways to fit it in a deployment zone kind of thing. Yeah, and then that beast on top. It'll be interesting, because they've shown it, obviously, in the diagram, they've shown it flat and then lifted up, ready to be drilled into the floor. I wonder if they'll be able to do that with that model. But I'm sure they could come up with some way of doing it, but it would need to support that weight very, very well. It does look fantastic. I can't even begin to imagine the rules for that. We had Lernian Terminator.
Yes, now these were probably the sexiest models I think I saw out of the new models.
Fantastic. And I think, they do look fantastic. They really do. There's just enough detail on them I mean, there's a decent amount of detail on them, but there's not too much.
Yes, and they just look the business. They really do.
Yeah.
I don't know if that guy's a sergeant or like a leader, but he looks. I would imagine the others maybe have a little less on them. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, maybe he's got that crystal on his helmet. Maybe who knows? But I think if you're an Alpha Legion player and you like these boys, then you're going to be pretty happy with that. Again, maybe not the best of loadouts, Power Axe and a Volkite. But
hey.
That's what, again, that we were saying earlier, weren't we? That's what happens with Legion specific Terminators, they get kitted out a certain way and you have to play around it if you want to change it up.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, the Acastus Knight. What do you think of this bad boy? He had some, what they look like, what are they called? The big guns no one ever takes because they're not that great. The really long range ones, yeah. Can't even think of them then.
Yes. Conversion beamer.
Conversion beamer, yeah, they look a little bit conversion beamerish.
Do you know what? I saw it, I went, wow. And then afterwards, when I looked at it again, I sort of went, okay.
It looked very mechanical.
It looks very mechanical. The big stuff for me, often like, the Titans and things, they have an instant wow factor.
Sure.
But then I quickly go off of them because I know that I'm never going to really own it and I'm never going to want to paint it.
Sure. Well, you can airbrush now.
So, I can airbrush now, but it's like, because I suppose for some people where they love the big models, then I'm sure it is, amazing and they want one. For me, I prefer the smaller models.
Just think of all the freehand you can do on all those panels.
I'm not Richard Gray. I am not going to be doing loads of freehand.
I must admit, I think I prefer my Porphyrion so far, but the arms on this are really nice because if they keep it going that way, they've got a little bit more. Sorry?
They're more army. They look more like arms.
Yeah, absolutely. The Porphyrion, the guns are stuck straight on. These have like joints to be able to maybe pose it a little bit. And I quite like the skull's head at the front as well. Who knows? Who knows? We'll have to see about that. And then the final thing they showed us was probably Alpharis. So these photos were coming through as I was, in another room talking to Sam. And I was like, who made this guy, Sam? And he was like, oh, I don't know if I can tell you. Which, is a bit frustrating at times, but I completely understand. They've been given very strict rules on that. But it definitely wasn't Sam, because he'd been working on something else. May have found out that it was Rob McFarlane. And I think this looks awesome. And I wouldn't be surprised if Rob had done the Lernian as well.
Yes, because that's often how they do it, don't they?
They work
often
on
say, they get them to do a set of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is all, I believe, then 3D sculpted.
Yes. Yeah. So it looks really nice, doesn't it?
Yes,
I think it looks
really
amazing.
Does. Just can't get enough of it, really. It'll be interesting to see what's on the base. If it's just normal Marines or something else. But
yes, indeed. Yeah, no, I agree. It'll be interesting to see what they put on there and how they work it.
Yeah, no, I really love that, and I can't wait. So we had, I said, repeating information again, but just in case people didn't realise or were here, Tony at the Christmas Open Day basically said we're getting 2 Primarchs this year. So we guessed that Dawn was going to come out now, gives us 6 months. We'd probably be hitting like something like, I'm trying to think what's in 6 months, maybe European Warhammer Fest will be at that time. Something like that. It'll be something around that time. I'm trying to remember, so, forgive me for getting it wrong. But I could see it coming out then, or Forge World Open Day. One of those two. Yep. So, yeah, and that'd be cool. And, that'll be another couple of units, and we'll be not far off having all the units having toys for them. From the first set of books, we'll be looking at just a few things like Iron Havocs, not a lot else. Really.
Yes.
Which is a good place for Games Workshop to be. Really good place. For Forge World to be. In the build-up to doing other stuff. Yeah. The only other thing I think I want to talk about in this little bit was in talking to Sam, he had all his books out for, where he gets his ideas from and inspiration from and all the, descriptions of all the Primarchs and stuff. And we know from Malevolence that Book 9, Book 8 is going to be the Blood Angels and the White Scars, with demons and stuff, a few other little bits, but we'll talk about that. And therefore, it makes sense that we're looking at either Sanguinius or the Khan next. Sam has made it clear for a long time that he wants to do Sanguinius. I can't see him not doing Sanguinius. In fact, he will probably do both, I would think. And there is some talk about Khan having 2 models. Because he rides a bike and doesn't ride a bike. The only issue with that is we've been told a number of times that they have these ideas for the Primarch models and doing this, and Dawn was going to come maybe in 2 poses, and other people are going to have 2 heads, switch out, and we've seen none of that. We've seen 1 pose. It'll be interesting to see if they allowed Khan to have 2 models released. I'm not.
Yes, because a few times we
2 £75 models for your Legion, or there'd be more with the jet bike.
Yes, definitely.
Maybe they can do it in such a way where the jet bike's on his base, or part of the display base, so you can take it off. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I'm sure they'll play around with loads of ideas.
I was talking to some friends again at the Weekender, and we brought up the subject of, I think it was the first Weekender when we saw a secondary Fulgrim. Do you remember the Sam had done
yes, absolutely.
his own version? And it was like a case of, I wish they'd brought that out. And clearly, it's not probably viable to do too many secondary Primarchs or to be re-releasing things like that. So it'd be interesting to see what they do, because that could...
Most of the time, you're just going to split the amount of money you take amongst 2 projects.
Exactly.
So
effectively, you're not making double the money. No. You're taking the same money and splitting it.
You'll make a little bit more, but you've had to spend lots more anyway. So financially, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense. If they could come up with some idea where, almost the Khan's bike is parked up or something like that, and he's off of it, so it's behind him but right next to him. There's potential for something like that. Who knows? I don't know. They'll sit and they'll work it out and they'll come up with whatever they're going to do. Just quickly in reference to Alfarius, I think it's amazing they put a helmet on him. I never want to see his face. I think it's perfect.
I didn't think of that, actually.
Yeah, he's helmeted, and I think Sam agrees. I think a few other people have agreed that we should never ever see Alfarius' face. It should just be left a complete secret.
Yeah,
completely. It would be very cool. So he had. He showed me his Pinterest page of ideas he's looking at for those 2 Primarchs, and Jagatai's was this Oriental, Southeast Asian kind of armor sets, but like the way they leave no space on those armor, it's constant detail everywhere. So it's like curls and whirls and things like that, but it's all over the armor. And it was like, I can see that. That would be really cool. With Sanguinius, he says he's got a very kind of set idea in his head of what he wants to do. Whether that's physically possible to do within the model is a different thing, because also you've got to be able to, the model has to hold itself up and everything else, and it has to be able to be made in a way that allows that as well. But he showed very classic Gothic statues of Michael versus the Devil. So Michael, wings spread, spear in his hand. It's who Sanguinius is based on, and that style as well. Spear pointing downwards, and there's variations on that theme, and kind of just looking at that and just imposing Sanguinius on top. If they can make something of that similar sculpt, that is going to potentially be amazing. It'll be a big model because those wings outspread will be a pain, but it'll be stunning, and it will stand out so much, and it obviously should. He is the angel. You don't want his wings folded up, do you?
No, definitely not.
No, so you do want a bit of that, which will be cool, and then that leaves us, because we were talking about Dawn and like the pose Dawn was in, and having his sword either straight down or straight up, and straight down is perfect. Straight down particularly, it's very easy to step on. I think it's very easy to step on the lion's toes, because the lion is a medieval knight, and you've already got your attacking, you've got your wild attacking, like Angron's lost it. You've got the lion hunting down something or ready to pounce on something. I want the lion, personally, I would want the lion to be in the kind of knightly, either just saluted or just kind of like not over the top movement wise. Mm-hmm. I think so, but who knows? We're getting to
I think they've done some of them really well. Like, I think Dawn really suits his pose. Yeah. I think Lehman Russ really suits his pose. There's so many I think work so well, and the next few are going to be interesting because I think it could be. Sam will do Sanguinius justice. I know he will. But there will be so many people going, oh, but I wanted him doing this, or I wanted him doing that. It's inevitable.
Don't make your own. But yes. It's crazy, isn't it? So we've seen Alfarius. There's only 3 left after that.
Yeah.
And then they've said they're not doing. There's been various things said that Forge World probably won't do the Demon Primarchs now because there's perfectly good plastic models for Magnus. The ones that have got them.
Yes. So, no, that may be something that we see more that GW want to do as well. It may be that they plan to release those, so why bother?
I've got a feeling we're going to get Angron and we're going to get Fulgrim in full demonic mode. Why wouldn't they? It makes sense. So
yes, yeah. Why would they do 2 of them and think, oh well, no, we'll leave it there?
Yes. Yeah. So it'll be
not their way at the moment, is it?
No, and I know it's a long way off. But it would be interesting to see then which direction they go. They still can do like a new version of Horus. They've still got people like the Sigillite, but it'll be early in the Black Books to start looking at maybe him and the Emperor,
Yep.
But those they still need to be done as well. And there's still plenty of characters they can do, but the Primarchs, that's a big void there when you finish them. It'll be. I don't even think they've probably thought about exactly
what's Sam going to do once he stops sculpting Primarchs? He's been doing it for the last 6 years.
Chill out. Well, as I say, he'll probably start the Emperor straight away, whether it comes out.
Oh, that's true, actually.
Whether it comes out in 1 year or 10 years, it'll be like, Sam's 10-year project of just working on the Emperor.
Yeah, and then he's probably got other ones that he's probably going to want to do as well. Like I'm sure, like the Sigillite will be done at some stage, and these other ones, and
there's plenty
of other bits and pieces.
There's loads of cool stuff. Maybe some cool demons as well. But okay, we just talked about the models, and that was a decent stretch of time. It's like 40 odd minutes. So,
do you know what? It was funny because I don't know if you got the same feeling, but you do get the bemoaners a bit when you go to events, and I think I had some people going, "Oh, I didn't see." I'm thinking there was loads in that seminar that was shown off. Again, we're going to wait a long time now before I think we see anything new from Forge World. We're going to
hopefully they got the odd little thing in and surprise us. But I think that's something.
What I really liked, because you weren't in the seminar, were you?
No.
Is when they at the questions. Cause I ducked out just before the questions, and someone put their hand up and said, "Oh, are you going to be redoing the Dreadnought Drop Pod?" And then Tony turned to Will and said, "Oh, yes, Will, you're working on that. Can you bring that along tomorrow?" And it was literally like an off-the-cuff suggestion that, someone said, "Oh, are you working on it?" So the reason we saw that drop pod was because someone put their hand up in the questions and said, "Are you working on this?"
So we'll get into a little bit of that later on, but that's something that used to happen a fair amount, and I wonder if that upsets people. But we'll get into more of that when we kind of review the weekend, I think. We'll take a break and then we'll come back and talk about the seminars and things like that. We're moving on now to talk about some of the seminars. I managed to leave my book at work, but with the mix of there was a fair few Necromunda ones, wasn't there? It was pretty fairly done.
Yeah, there was, and in some ways, obviously we all knew. They announced this as the Necromunda and Heresy Weekender, And at the time, I thought, well, do you know what? I don't know how many Necromunda ones I want to go to, but I must admit, the Necromunda ones I did go to, I thoroughly enjoyed.
That's cool. I say we won't really get into the Necromunda stuff here, but I know they had a few converts from Heresy players who.
And not to go into it in too much detail, but I did feel as though where the Necromunda is obviously quite new and quite like all these options, it felt very much like the first Heresy weekender. You know, there's all this cool stuff people are talking about, and we can do this and we can do that, and it was all very exciting. And that's very much what it felt like. It just felt as though there's all this new, amazing stuff that could be coming down the line.
Yeah, and that may be part of it, but also it's very good stuff as well. So, you know,
yes.
Fair play. It's all groovy, and you know, they've got to do what they can. It's not a problem. So what we'll do is we'll miss out, because they were the first few ones were really about Necromunda.
They were, yeah.
Yeah, and the first real Heresy one was the Age of Darkness forum. You didn't go to this, did you?
No, I think this was the first day. This was a Saturday, wasn't it? Yes. I think, yeah, because at that sort of time, I think I was very much sort of sticking models into Golden Demon and chatting to people, if you know what I mean. Like, it's very sort of social, the painting scene. So it was a case of seeing people and having a chat and talking. So I missed probably most things up until after lunch.
That's fair enough. So this was the one where I queued. I kind of walked around. I hadn't really looked at the size of these rooms. So previous years, these rooms have been used for the art things and whatever, and they lost a good... How many feet would you say? These were a lot smaller than previous years, weren't they?
Yeah, definitely a lot smaller, yeah.
So I was expecting, I don't know, maybe about 50 seats, and there was about 30 seats in there. So queued, joined not really a queue. I think everyone was just, you know, hanging around. Walked in, all the seats started to fill up, and people started sitting on the table. And at this point, GW guy came in and said, right, if you're not seated, you've got to leave. Like, fair enough. Looking around, I couldn't really take a seat having entered after people. So I was pretty annoyed, actually. I thought... You've put
pissy mood. I think you were in.
Yeah, you put something like that in a room which really wasn't sufficient for it, and you probably should have known that 30 seats wouldn't be enough. And
maybe slightly naive that obviously most people going to this weekend were for the Horus Heresy side of things, and one of the probably quite key things that maybe people wanted to get in on was in one of the smallest areas.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people left or had to leave, because actually the people who were sitting on the table were left alone when they shouldn't have been. They kind of glossed over that, didn't bring it up too quickly. But, I don't know, a dozen, 15 people, which it's not a huge amount when you think about it, but that's a third of the people who wanted to be in there. And it just felt a bit off. And I must admit, I was, after missing the first seminar to go look at new models and having no new models to look at, therefore missing a seminar, and then this,
yes.
And a couple of other bits. At this point I was seriously not in a good mood, and it's one of those things. And I thought, you know what? After it calmed down 5 or 10 minutes, I thought, well, okay, let's see what else goes on with the weekend. Let's not judge it just on that. But it was a bit of a bummer, and really put a downer on my Saturday morning, big time. So what we had was Neil Wiley and Anuj Malhotra from the rules team. Emma Ayres is the other person. I sometimes think that she gets forgotten about, but she's the other part of the rules team. She manned their desk in the other room. And Neil and Anuj ran basically an open forum about the rules. There were a few people in there. Again, a lot of what I'm going to drag out. Pendrag on the Heresy 30k forums is very good at writing stuff down, so there's no point in me copying it when he's doing that. So I've gone and borrowed his notes again, so massive thanks to Darren for that. But what we had is, you know, people were expressing issues. Well, they highlighted they know there were issues with the red books, with the army books, and they had, and you could see it on their desks as well. Their red books had just shed loads of post-it notes stuck in them, and they were all things that they were looking at. I mean, they were just rammer-jammed full of them, absolutely full of them. They are going to look at these moving forwards. We'll get into that in just a second. And the one thing they won't do is they won't make options that are available now. They won't make them non-viable, so non-allowable even. So they won't stop the Blood Angels being able to upgrade all their flamers to assault cannons. They might put the points up so it's prohibitive, but you can still have them.
Yeah, so they might tweak it so that it becomes a more costly option, but they won't remove it.
Yeah, so if you've made a conversion, it's still going to be legal, which is nice. I think that's a nice way to go, and that's something you don't have to worry about when they're worried about balance to a point, but not to a competition level. It's not something they have to overly worry about, which is quite good.
Well, I think what's good there is GW have always been very good at trying to make sure things don't become they don't make things that you suddenly have to throw them away.
Yeah, make them obsolete.
That makes sense.
Well,
obsolete. They with all things they've done, it's like even if you've got an old model, they'll find a way of it working somehow.
Yeah, 40k has had that issue in the past, and so has Fantasy, but not very often, to be fair, and I think sometimes it's blown out of proportion, but it is frustrating when you've got a unit that you then can't use in an army, or it's switched which force it was, that kind of thing. So they say they're going to avoid that, which is good. What we won't get is, we probably won't get any new red books until, Legion red books, until all the Legions are available. So we're going to have to wait for the Dark Angels for that, because otherwise it's... Well, they only did that last one upgrade a year ago, so that would be quite.
It seems longer, doesn't it? But in real terms, it hasn't been that long.
No, and to do one now and then to do another one once they've updated it always is a bit. It would be a bit cheeky, and people would complain about the cost of that. So they're not going to do that. They're going to wait till all the books are out, and then push on that way, which is good. Within that, they know there are issues, and they talked about this in the Malevolence Forum as well. They know there are issues with units like veterans and destroyers and things like that. So these veterans, they're just so good that you don't see that many Legion-specific unique units, because veterans just do everything, and it's also. What that can lead to is if they try and make units fit around them, there isn't much design space for it as well. I think that's part of it. The destroyers, on the other hand, are never used because they're just not good. So they're looking at balancing those kind of things. So knocking down veterans a little bit, building up destroyers.
Yep.
One way they did talk about with the destroyers was providing alternate weapon options. So they were talking about psych ammunition on them. So, and that fits in when we talk about Malevolence as some things they're going to do with the not with the psychic phase, but to make it more engaging. Being able to give destroyers the ability to target psychers would be potentially a very good reason to take a unit.
Yeah, because what that does in some ways is if people are complaining that maybe demons or Thousand Suns, they're too powerful, they do this, they do that. If it then becomes a sort of like you need to take anti-psych as well as like a bit of anti-flyer. So when you're balancing your list out, destroyers could be like a good little addition to sort of stop those lists. You think, that's going to cause me problems.
And I think it would be a case of like if you've got a unit in there, doesn't mean you stop those lists, but it means you've got potential to threaten them without giving up like the power of your army to do so. So that will help balance the armies out and have less of that rock, paper, scissors effect, which is always, it can be a bit frustrating when you're going from one army where you're great to the next army where you're rubbish. But yeah, that's good. Yeah. And I will say, because Anuj, when I spoke to him very briefly, he made it very clear he plays a lot of Heresy. I think he's part of some London gaming group. And he seems very keyed up on the rules. we'll go into a little bit on that later as well. They did put forward the question of like, what do people prefer, 7th or 8th? They're basically putting 4 options forward about what they can do. Stay 7th, go with 8th, and then essentially hybrids of the two. Personally, I don't see there's much reason to talk about this. They're going to make a decision at some point, and the majority of the gamers will go with their decision. It's as simple as that.
And there will be some gamers that love it, and there'll be some gamers that hate it.
Absolutely, both ways. It might be worth mentioning here, we did get a member of staff did talk to us. I don't want to say who it was, just in case, because I'm not 100% sure. Should have asked him at that point. We've talked about Alan's original ideas of going 8th, haven't we, on the show? And that was that was very much the stance this time last year, and then was informed that for full clarity, because we portray the facts as we know them. What we didn't know, evidently, is that they looked at it and it was they thought it was going to be more difficult than it was, and that it wouldn't work with the nature of Heresy. And so an idea was to have 8th edition with 7th edition staying. This rulebook had to come out now no matter what. They didn't have time to change anything now anyway. We knew that. So it was going to stay 7th edition for a little while. But then once 8th edition settled down, we can see how it's progressed as a game. There's a lot of cool stuff in 8th edition, even if you don't like the game overall. And to look to pull some of those rules into the Age of Darkness rule set, which actually is what I've kind of said it a couple of times. I don't mind if they have an Age of Darkness rule set if they develop it. It needs developing.
Yeah.
And I think things like, as I said before, vehicles taking, even if it's levels of damage rather than the wounds that they are in 8th, even if it's half strength, something happens to them, something like that, I think those would help the game. The psychic phase needs to be redone, whether it's done like 8th, whether it's done like an older edition, like an old fantasy edition, whatever works, but it needs to change somehow in the long run. And there's a lot of little things like that, and I think most of the Heresy community would want armor facings to stay the same and templates and things like that. I'm not that bothered either way. But there is a sentiment and a probably fairly true sentiment that Heresy will be that more complex game. I want to say elite almost, but that's the wrong word. You know what I mean? More detailed, more involved game than 40k. So, I think that's.
Obviously. What I thought was very interesting about this conversation was how it was referred to that what very much was the idea of 8th was to take all of the armies and codices that have come before it and try and condense try to push everything towards the middle ground, and to make things a bit more uniform. So obviously there isn't these big peaks and troughs of this is amazingly good and this is amazingly bad. But the issue that they saw in Heresy was that a lot of the legions are already quite condensed, and they look to try and pull out individual bits, try and expand them to make them a bit different. And they didn't want them everything to be condensed, because obviously that would make everything too similar, and they were worried that would take time for them to obviously work those nuances out. So the safer bet was to leave it as it was. And I think that when you look at it on those terms, I've heard a lot of people saying that, they've already got all rules for the Forge World vehicles and things in 40k and all this, that and the other. But vehicles are one thing, but I suppose the legions are a completely different kettle of fish, aren't they? Trying to give them their own flavours and trying to make sure that they don't make everything too generic and they're too similar. If your Ultramarines play the same as Night Lords, you're probably not going to like that.
And I was all for it changing over at the start. The bigger things for me are things like your Devastator units, where you can have 10 las cannons all in a unit. That is, in 8th edition, that's a very different beast than it used to be in 7th edition. Yes, they can still die, but actually when they can all fire at different targets and they're all doing massive amounts of damage, potentially, things like that require a whole... you change one thing, you affect a lot of things. So, after it settled down, after we've looked, we knew we were going to have this for a period of time, I'm all up for an Age of Darkness edition that is pushed forwards. And I will say later on, I think Neil and Anuj particularly, haven't spoken to Emma a huge amount, and Neil and Anuj were centre stage for this and for Malevolence. I felt they were very good at what they were doing. But
I did as well. In fact, it was weird because that first one, because obviously I wasn't in the Age of Darkness then.
Should we talk about Malevolence?
I was in the Malevolence.
Yeah, we'll talk about
Malevolence.
Let's finish this up for a second.
I do feel as though that it's in safe hands with those two. I do feel as though they're passionate for it. I think that's the key with any of this. Yeah. Is if you are passionate for it, you're going to do a good job. Everyone's going to appreciate what you do because you love it. If they all just sat there and went, whatever. Yeah, oh, you don't like that? Okay, yeah, we don't care. It would be a very different. But they're not like that. They were all really, really keen on hearing what people had to say, and also, you could tell that they wanted to be part of it. I mean, Anuj was in the gaming, the blood game section on the Saturday night, watching, sitting down watching people play games. So that shows you that level of sort of that, wanting to be involved.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Just finishing up Age of Darkness, because we've got a little bit more to say about it when we get to Malevolence, I think. FAQs. So there's 3 of them that work on the team, and they do a lot of different work, and they don't have a huge amount of time to give over to FAQs. I think there is an expectation a little bit that, again, these are the more experienced gamers playing Heresy, usually, and kind of you can work stuff out yourself. We often see FAQ and you're like, really? Someone asked that? That's common sense. So those things definitely. But they have got stuff. They're still working on getting that document out with a few of the changes they've got. Whether we see a real decent FAQ anytime soon is probably not going to happen. But we've got things out there. And in fact, actually, the Age of Darkness book answered a few. Yeah, there's a few questions in there. But it answered quite a few of the ones that we did have from before. But if you do have a question, and you can write it on, you can either email in or write it on the Facebook page, and they do get sent to the team if it's not something that's been answered before or whatever. So you know that they do hear about it, which is good. And
to say as well, we do have a good community, I think, in Heresy. So often if you've come across a problem, someone else might have as well. And there's usually a logical person there that will say, oh, yeah, well, this is how we do it.
Mileage may vary. The problem is when you get 2 groups who say this is how we do it and it's different.
Oh no, we do it this way.
Yeah, that's the fundamental problem. If you've got a specific issue, say, I don't know, you're using whatever needs an FAQ, and you use it all the time, and you're at the table, maybe you bring it up before the game that this is how I play the rule. What do you think? Are you happy with that? That kind of stuff is useful. There were some questions about plastic units. They're looking at what plastic units to port over, particularly for Custodes. This is, I think, literally today seen they put out trial rules for 40k models, the Custodes 40k rules. Have you seen that?
Yes.
So that's really interesting.
I saw it put on. I haven't actually read through any of it yet.
So that's 2 vehicles, 2 dreadnoughts, or 1 dreadnought. Two weapon options, I believe, something like that. But it's actually beta rules, so they've specifically asked for feedback, detailed feedback, and they're telling you you got to tell us how many games you've played and everything else. And that's a new step. And that's an interesting one because that can be a lot of work going through that. But that's for 40k, and that is a game system which needs to be, tournament ready. when those rules come out. But it just sort
of because they risk upsetting a lot of people.
Mellow.
So they risk upsetting a lot of people if they suddenly release a new faction or some new units for a faction in there, and then suddenly that unbalances things, and all the tournament players flock to it because it will gain them X amount of victories. You can see why they have to be a little bit cautious on those sort of.
It's really interesting to see they're beta testing it that way. It's quite cool because there is, they do have playtesters in Forge World. And Nuj was talking about his playtesters and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so that's cool. They're on that. And then I think questions got asked about plastic units for Heresy, like what are we going to see? And apparently there are no immediate plans for more plastic units. It looks like that November slot where we saw Prospero and Betrayal at Calth. I suspect that is purely going to be specialist games. When we talk about Adeptus Titanicus, I could see that being November this year. I could see it being that late now. That's me just trying to work it out. That's no prior knowledge. And it seems pretty sensible that it would be. So, yeah. However, we know that Games Workshop have purchased, or they're putting another factory in on their site up at Nottingham. And part of that is office space, I think, because they are very crammed up there, but also for more plastic machines. For basically, they even if they wanted to, they couldn't put any more in where they are, from what I've heard, because they don't have enough power. So going in over the road, but they need to expand anyway. We've talked about this, haven't we, for about a year, like expecting this to happen. So I think that's going to take a little while, obviously, to get up and running. But once they've got more machines and they're handling the load they've got, which when you look at it, they still sell out of some lines every now and then. You never know.
Some lines took ages to get back in. Do you remember how long those skulls took to come back in that they released? It took ages to come back in the stores.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're looking at, you never know, down the line once they've got all settled down, there's no reason why they couldn't then make another plastic unit for one of the units where they'll know they're selling off. But who knows? I mean, that's probably down the line. We're still waiting for them to get enough paint handles in. I mean, they're sourced from somewhere else.
I mean, how many do you think they? If every, I bet they thought, all right, we'll probably sell. Some people I'll buy maybe one or two of these, and you see people buying like 8 or 10.
I think Tunbridge Wells have got 25 on order.
Wow,
something like that, and that's without like the couple of us who are going and going, you got any in yet? Who are so yeah, but and that's outsourced as well. They're struggling to get them in time. But when they've got that set up, you never know that they might then move something to a plastic kit. But that takes. They've got so much stuff going on with Age of Sigmar and with Specialist and with, I suspect some of this Specialist delay is just the time it's taking to print the stuff amongst their normal schedule of toys. Because we got release upon release coming out at the moment. So
I suppose now it's a case of, it's not so much. It's almost like queue it up. Well, this has got to be printed. Then this is, and then we've got to do this, and not this.
Only that, it's got to be shipped all around the world for release date on the same day as well. So they've got to print it up, and then like Australia have got to have theirs. So however long it takes to get Australia, 8 weeks or something on a boat, So yeah, and it's a problem. It's a good problem to have, but it's a problem they have. So that was the Age of Darkness forum. By all accounts, everyone I've talked to who was in it came out of that very positively, which is good to see. And maybe that's
it's good, and hopefully there'll be more of these as well. Hopefully. This could almost become a regular thing, If every weekender they had a rules forum where you could go and talk to them and put ideas forward or talk to them about set problems. It's a great way to get really good constructive feedback, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And they seem very keen. And with those beta rules for 40k, it shows that maybe that's something they're going to roll across anyway, and that might come out a little bit more through the year. I don't expect it for everything, but maybe the odd thing that they've got a couple of ways of going with. They might try something out first than seeing how it lands. But that's cool. Yeah, so that was really good. I did go to Malevolence, so this was, this is usually one of the big ones. Now, this is the one. I was sat halfway back. I was sat with a mate, Howard, and I think 10 minutes into this, because this was the first time I got to hear Neil speak, Neil and Anuj, both on the stage again. And Howard and I turned around to each other and basically said, he's really good. These guys are really good. And it was at that point I thought, oh yeah, and I would say that John French was comparing this one as well. And it was at that point I remembered, oh yeah, this is Alan's seminar, isn't it? The next Black Book is, It was very much Alan holding court. And yeah, there were other people there who were adding lots of great detail and stuff. But, it was very much, that was the one where everyone went to see Alan speak about the new book. And, you don't want to say you didn't miss Alan, because it was a very different thing. Very, stylistically it was different, and they're talking slightly, different focuses as well, I think. Not majorly different. But actually, as you said, felt in very safe hands with Neil and Anuj on there.
Yes, and I did like the way Anuj was treated very much as the new boy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And wasn't allowed to hold the mic.
No, it's quite good. And that helped. And I heard reports, I don't know how true this is, but one of my mates did say that Neil looked like he was quite nervous through that whole thing, understandably so. And I know John was pulled in to help run that, to help keep that going. I think that was a good idea. He's got such good knowledge of the books anyway, and the links, and he's very good at doing that, and takes a bit of the pressure off two guys on the stage as well. So yeah, it was. I'd say it's one of those things like no one can replace Alan, and I'm not saying that anyone has, but someone's got to take up the baton that he's left, this legacy of books.
Yeah.
I didn't realise Neil had written from the third book. He's been involved in the team.
Yes.
Didn't realise it was that long. I thought it was a few books. I'm trying to remember if Emma's been 2 books or 1 book. Certainly she was there at last year's Weekender and various open days. But Neil's been there a long time. And Anuj is the new boy. Seems to be very much the rules man. I could be wrong. He could be writing all kinds of stuff as well. But that seems to be a focus for him. And it felt very good. And it feels slightly more rules aware than they used to be, if you know what I mean. Okay.
Yeah, so what you mean, like they were conscious of
just
something new might do versus just talking about the story in the background.
Well, not even so. Yeah, there are great quotes from Alan. I've heard from various people. It's like, why would you try and do? So someone's tried to do this with the rules. Well, why would you even try and do that? That game, it's obviously not designed that way. Whereas these guys are like, oh, they're trying to do that. Yeah, that's okay. We'll do something to make that work differently.
Yes.
And Alan was, his approach, which was brilliant, was all about that story, and what a story, and these guys. I'm not saying they're not about the story, but there seemed to be a little bit of a different approach to the way the rules worked within the game system. Anyway, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It sounds awful because you feel like whichever way you say that, you're disparaging one of the other, but I'm not. It's just 2 very slightly different approaches. That's all. And both of them will work very well, I'm sure. So, yeah. They were just really good. And we finally got the real confirmation that Book 8 is now the Blood Angels at Cygnus and the White Scars at Chondax. Which all the Dark Angels players, I feel for you, bros. All the White Scars players, all the soon-to-be White Scars players are cheering. Someone's got to be last. We've been saying it for ages, and it's, it just has to be someone. It's a shame. but we're also going to get.
I suppose it's even crueler though that they felt as though their book was next, and then it got taken away from them.
Yeah, and this is a problem.
That's got to be harder, isn't it?
Yeah, and this again, we've said this before. This is the problem with announcing stuff early. You know, we all want to hear all the news. What's going on? What's going on? What
you're working on next? What you're doing?
Had we not known what the Angelus had been planned, then the disappointment would have been lessened a little bit. And that's the nature of the beast. So we're looking at Blood Angels and White Scars with full-on, Forge World Legion histories, the lot. Demons of the Ruined Storm Army. Some Alpha Legion information, Chondax, because they are playing around with the White Scars, and some Space Wolves. Just touching on the end of the Alexis scuffle. And we're looking at a unit, maybe a unit and a character from each of them, but a little bit of filling out that story.
That's quite cool, isn't it?
It is quite cool.
I do like it when they include an extra, couple of units for one that they've maybe already covered, because I think it just keeps everyone's interest going. And
yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what they do and who they do. Obviously, everyone's like, "Oh, it's going to be Bjorn," don't know. Who knows? It's probably still up in the air now as to what they're doing and what these characters and units are. But it's cool, and it ties in, because the Alexis, it's a big event, but not a lot happens. So it's good that we're getting to see that in here. Because otherwise there wouldn't be probably any more Space Wolf stuff for a while. The Alpha Legion you can throw everywhere, but Space Wolves have a fairly... they do bits and pieces, but it's a fairly rigid kind of what they do, and they can appear, but it might not be for a while.
Yeah.
And all this means that Book 9, at the moment, will cover the Dark Angels at Thramus and the Sarum campaign, and Sarum's the Dark Mechanic of Forge World that is featured in the World Eaters background. So yeah, lots of Dark Mechanicum hopefully planned for Book 9. Which again... that's going to upset some people. There's a lot of people who are really hoping for the Dark Mechanicum stuff. Probably Mark Bedford as well, because I know he loves drawing all that. Cool. That sounds good to me. As I say,
they did also promise that they wanted to get it out this year, which I thought was really good. I thought that might be. I was thinking, if they said it was definitely a 2019 release, I wouldn't have been surprised.
So so one of the reasons they're saying they're doing this is to get a book released this year, and this is the way to get Book 8 released this year. So some Dark Angels fans think this is because their background's really hard to write. I don't know, maybe. Maybe just the Dark Mechanicum and Thramas would take up more space than Chondax, I think, potentially. I don't know, but this is the way they feel that they can get a Book 8 out this year. Wouldn't be surprised if it's weekend of next year. Just the way.
Yeah, I have a feeling that it could easily slip to them, because let's face it, if you're getting near Christmas and there's any sort of delay, then that's the next logical step.
Absolutely.
But that wouldn't faze me one little bit. No. But when they're aiming for 2018, I was like, okay, that's really positive, really because in my eyes, I was thinking, well, they could just say 2019 flat, and just say, it's going to take us a while. This is when we think, and I would have accepted that as well. I would have thought, okay, fair enough.
I mean, it might be the case they started working on the Blood Angel stuff first. Don't really know, but that's what we've got. So in essence, malevolence refers to the nature of demons, but also the machinations of people playing around with the heresy and diverting things and having their fingers in. So Horus sending the Alpha Legion to do all kinds of stuff, the Alpha Legion doing all kinds of stuff by themselves, and even the Cabal, maybe, in the way they manipulate things as well. As I spoke about earlier, we'll be getting this section called Psychana. So this is not a rules section, but it's creating some ways to have more interaction with armies who are, for armies that aren't psycho heavy. They didn't really go into it a huge amount, but essentially, I think they're looking at balancing up that psychic phase at the moment, and maybe not.
I must admit, I don't remember them talking about that a bit too much.
No, it was mentioned, and part of this was talking about the ammunition for destroyers, possibly having some psych ammunition within there. Hopefully to help make people take them as well. Talk about possessed marines, but the more conventional possessed marines rather than Galvorback. Somewhere more towards the 40k possessed, which will be really cool because hopefully that will open them up to other Chaos Legions as well, if they want to go that way in time. And then the big thing with the Demons list is to show the apparent, and I say apparent, they didn't say apparent, they said lack of knowledge, but the apparent lack of knowledge at the time, because anyone who's read the books knows that most of the legions have actually dealt with demons in some form or another, and some seem to know what they're dealing with. They're going to be less focused on the gods. They're going to be more generic. Like the Imperium hasn't classified these beings yet.
Yes, yeah.
So we are going to get rules that kind of lean them one way or the other, but probably not the gods' names so much.
Yes, you're not going to say. You hope. What are they saying that you're not going to get? Like, say, oh well, this is my Khornate demons.
Yeah, but you will have blood letters. You can have blood letters on the table, but they might not be. You might not have a bloodthirster of Khorne. The name within the names of that, and within the style of how they do the rules, it will be a little bit more ambiguous. And what that can do is then allow them to create some maybe non-specific, whether they would or not, because the nature of 40k seems very solidified now with the four gods and not creating anything outside it. But as a player, it allows you to play around with what demons you have, which is quite cool.
Well, I personally thought it could be a really cool thing that it gives them a bit of scope to go out and do some new different things rather than that sort of just rewriting the Demons Codex.
Yeah, it allows them to play with the rules as well, which is good. One thing they did talk about is changing Fearless to a morale style of fading away. So, like old school fantasy, you fail a leadership test by 3, you lose 3 demons. That kind of thing.
Yes, yeah.
So there's potential for that. But yeah, there's lots of we don't know, and they things could change as well. And I could see them doing a few models because once they're done for 30k, they can be using 40k and Age of Sigmar. It's fairly sensible for them to create some cool stuff. I'm sure someone will want to. One issue with demons is they've always been vulnerable to shooting, but they're talking about also getting rid of deep. Like anyone who played 7th edition demons knows that you deep strike them everywhere, all this kind of stuff. Talking about having them coming across the table, but maybe having rules to protect them as they get across the table, but then maybe making them a little bit more vulnerable to weapons that are up close. So the balance is still there, but you're actually getting to engage rather than just, I've moved all my models forward and taken them all off.
Yes,
which
yeah.
Because
I suppose in Heresy we do have a very good ability of killing troops, don't we? Like we've said before, so many things can
even
kill
worse
troops.
Is demons don't really have armor. Volkite will rip demons to shreds.
Yes.
Yeah. So they can have other saves and stuff, but it's still not the base demon troops have always been fairly lightly hurt. They've got protection against everything, but it's not great protection. And there are lots of weapons that will ruin them. So having that little bit of a change will lead to more interactive games, which is good. There was some discussion on the Blood Angels and what they're looking to do with them. They want to expand the hosts, talk about the different hosts. Blood Angels made up of different hosts, like the Sanguinary host and things like that. They're talking about linking, writing. So things like, where do we go? So the Death Company are a 40k thing due to the nature of how they come about, but their roots are still based in their 30k Legion. But it's only with the death of Sanguinius that they actually turn into the Death Company as we know them. There was something different beforehand. So Neil was talking about that. You're going to be able to see that element there before it changed. and there were other hosts were mentioned, but the really interesting one is the Destroyer host. And if anyone manages to pick up the event-only book, Sons of the Emperor, the stories will become available at some point. The very first story is actually all about Sanguinius unleashing his Destroyer host against the planet, and how much it hurts him to do it, because destroyers are that's the bane of life, aren't they? They are the weapons that they are the last resort. They are nothing will come back from this, and even more than Guilliman, he doesn't want to unleash these weapons, but there are times when he has to unleash these weapons. And so to protect his sons, he doesn't have destroyer units. What they do is they kind of draw lots randomly, essentially, or the roles handed out amongst the whole legion, and then this host is drawn from various parts of the legion, and then these Marines are effectively stripped of their name while they're in the host. They become the role of destroyer as an identity, and they're given these masks, and then they serve their function, they do their job, and then when they come back, they hand the mask back and accept their identity again and go back into where they fit into the host. Which is really
yes, it did sound very cool.
Yes, just to try and kind of, not take that upon themselves, which is really good, really cool. And and again, that shows that all that backstory that we had with the Black Books, none of that's going away. It's all still there. That's cool. The White Scars themselves, we didn't get a huge amount of. There was some talk about a 2 Primarch kit for that one.
They mentioned
on bike and
possibly a jet bike and possibly on foot, which I thought was cool.
It is cool. I think we might have mentioned that in the earlier section. The price of him on a jet bike is going to be like upwards of 120 quid, I think. Because think about the 2 walls. They're 70 quid for Russ. And it's going to be about the same amount of resin. So, whether that happens.
Is there any way they could do a jet bike set, a bit like how they did the walls?
I think if you have, the only way you could do it potentially is to have either the Khan jumping off of it or the Khan stood in front of it. But I don't know if you want him stood still. And then have the jet bike come out of that base. You could have a set base with the jet bike and the Khan in it. So I don't know, but there we go. Well, we do know they're going to get the full treatment based around Chondax and the Alpha Legion interference. And that was it. One other thing we did get on the Dark Angels is there's a lot of groundwork done on them that Alan had actually done before. They started to expand the 6 wings of the Dark Angels. We've heard a lot about the 6 wings and things like that. And one other thing I want to add in there is authors, and so when Forge World started this, they were working off all the information they had plus the novels that were coming out. And one thing that's happened more recently is Forge World have started to take on the role of mapping out the major incidents. So, say Beta Karma. Let's use Beta Karma as an example. The idea being that Forge World plan out how this war was fought in a way that they can write it into a black book, and then the novelist takes that information and weaves their story through it, so that it's not Forge World trying to go, Space Marine A was here one moment and he's here next moment, and that's 120 miles away from each other through the thickest fighting there is, to stop that kind of thing happening. But also, and
I think also to add a bit of extra depth to those battles, wasn't it, as well? To try and make sure that we don't end up with a very flat, full stay, full speed. No one else was involved.
Yeah, which Cygnus is potentially that. They flew in, they landed on a planet, they had a big fight, they flew off. That doesn't make a very good black book. They've expanded on that. So that's cool. That's really good, actually. And I think, actually, that will make better novels as well moving forward. So a lot of this information is there. That they do work closely together. They are aiming towards that one goal as well, and they're not going to be tripped up by each other, accidentally, which is good. But I came out of Malevolence really looking forward to that book.
Yes, so did I, actually. Yes, so did I.
I mean, I don't think I've ever not, but it could have been tricky. And I think it's a real testament to all those involved that it wasn't tricky. And we came out and it's like, yeah, actually, cool,
I think that what really was the acid test, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, okay, this is the big one. This is Alan's seminar. How's it going to go down? But I think everyone was happy. I didn't hear anyone complain about it.
And Neil, even if he was nervous, he was quick-witted. He was funny. He was, taking the mick out of John French half the time as well. It was good. It was entertaining. So really pleased with that. And then the only one I've really got here now to talk about, apart from the books, is Titan Death. Did you go into Titan?
No, I didn't go to this one. No.
Right.
And I sort of wish I did, because I had a few people talking about it and it sounded really cool.
Yeah, I was looking at new models because they were everywhere at this point. And in fact, Will Hayes was talking to us about models and then got dragged into it to talk about Titans. So this Titan Death seminar was a bit of a mix of a lot of things. It was a mix of what the novelists are doing at Beta Garman, a little bit about Adeptus Titanicus, but not too much, and then just some other stuff about Beta Garman from kind of the background point of view in terms of the game, I believe. So it wasn't.
Who was this? Tony hosting this one?
I don't know if he was hosting. I know who was hosting, but Andy Hall was part of it. Guy Haley was part of it, and Will. So he might have been hosting it. So I wasn't in there. We did get a bit of Adeptus Titanicus information. So the idea is we're going to get a blast of releases. So it's going to come out, and then most of it's going to come out with it. Now this sort of makes me wonder if it's going to be less of a ongoing game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't know. Forge World with Blood Bowl and all the stuff they're doing, they want one release every 3 months for each of their systems. But at Adeptus Titanicus, they're looking at getting a lot out straight away, which makes me think that it might not fit that. But again, that's pure speculation.
A bit more of the old-fashioned splash release that we had back
which isn't necessarily a bad thing if they have the odd thing like that. That
the only good thing about that is if they do it that way, it could very much mean that we're then, because I do love the new Blood Bowl and Necromunda, but the only thing for me, it's like another thing to commit to. Yeah. And if there's lots of stuff coming out, you think, oh man, that's going to be a lot of money.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to spend. Whereas more of a splash release, you think, well, it's great, I'll get that. I know I'll buy all the things within a month cycle, and then I'm done. I've got everything I need, and
away you go.
I can play it if I want to play it, and etc.
Yeah, and that means that Forge World don't have to keep on it. And I could be wrong. We could be wrong. So it wouldn't be the first time. It certainly would be the last if I was wrong. But it's an interesting release thing. We have new Titan classes, should I say? One of which will receive a 28mm scale model. It'll be interesting to see what that is. I want it to be a Nemesis class warlord, but I don't know. Who knows? We just haven't heard. But what there will be is new weapons for both scales. So what they can do is they can, because it's all CAD, they can make it for Adeptus Titanicus and then scale it up and fill it in. So we're going to get weapons because of that, which is really cool. It's going to come with plastic Titans.
I suppose it's great because obviously over the years they've released Titans, haven't they? Slowly but surely. I suppose this is almost like a bit of an accelerator for them, the putting down loads of ideas, what they want to do, and
absolutely, yeah,
and start working on it straight away.
Yeah, they haven't. They're not committing to an Imperator Titan yet, which is probably sensible, even in that scale.
Well, yeah, because everyone will take that as that's the size, that's the scale, that's what it looks like.
Well, no, because one of these issues with making these things is actually they're every Titan was slightly different, and some are bigger than others, and particularly Imperator with its different cathedrals on top. Just depends how big those are and where do you measure it to and all this. There are lots of variances within that, but people would just want a 28mm one. I don't think the resin would handle the weight, to be honest. But yeah, even in Adeptus
need
Titanicus,
a new material.
Yeah, even in Adeptus Titanicus scale, it will be a chunky piece of resin. We're going to get plastic Titans, and some of the terrain will be plastic as well, which is good. And that's that's one of the major reasons for the delay. They're talking about Chaos Titans, like fully Chaos Titans, at a later date, which is quite cool.
Cool.
Again, whether they push on beyond Adeptus Titanicus only being a Horus Heresy setting, I don't know. You never know. In a few years' time, you might see it expanded. Depends what plans they've got. We're not privy to all that. And the rules are designed for a mana pool against mana pool, so that's a handful of Titans, maniple, manipulate, all that jazz, all that hands. A handful of Titans against a handful of Titans, but you can go down to one Titan versus one Titan. So it's not designed to be 20, 30 Titans against each other, though I'm sure some people will play it that way just for getting all their models out. But it looks cool, and I can't wait to see more. As I say, I think we'll be waiting a fair while for it. But hey ho.
Yes, that sounds cool. That sounds very cool.
And there was some information about Beta Garmin. So Beta Garmin is it's basically one of the major safe routes in and out of the Sol system. The censure host that went to Prospero, they gathered there and went there, and Horus is making his way there, and Dawn wants to at least kind of bleed him a bit there. The ultimate idea would be to break Horus at Beta Garmin and not even let him into the Sol system. But in reality, they know that he probably will, but they can bleed a lot of his forces here. And there is an element of lots of Titans sitting in the walls of Terra and maybe not as effective as they could be. So give them a war zone where they can actually be out there causing massive Titan death. Then that's possibly a better use of their resources. And it's got 3 war zones. It's got the Great Slaughter, which is a gigantic infantry battle with, this is mainly guard. This is humans digging in. This is a proper, huge scale World War II style, just death everywhere. Or World War One, maybe.
Cool.
And then Titan Death is the Titan engines against each other, trying to whittle the enemy down as much as possible. And then the final one is the Sea of Fire, which is the Void War. The deaths here even go so far as to create a new solar phenomena. That's how many spaceships are going to die here. And there were apparently hints that this is going to be the setting for the Battlefleet Gothic game that's to come.
Oh,
so
cool.
One of the reasons I think there's potential that Adeptus Titanicus might be not so ongoing is I can see Battlefleet Gothic coming out as a standalone game. Just here you go, here's Battlefleet Gothic, Bosch. And then whether they do, so Battlefleet Gothic, Beta Garmin. And then, you never know, 5 years' time doing Battlefleet Gothic, something else,
Right, yeah.
I've got a feeling that could be what they're doing. But again, that's pure speculation. But that was, the rest of the Heresy stuff was mainly around the novels. And we're going to go and get Michael on to talk about that. Unfortunately, he's ill for this show. We will get him on to talk about it next show and cover all that stuff. But there wasn't a huge amount. There were a lot mixed with the Necromunda. So there was the art of the Heresy and the Necromunda. I went into this, got all the cool pictures. I've been to so many of these. There isn't a huge amount, and a lot of it was focused towards Necromunda because of the stuff they were showing off. And it feels bad to say it, but the guys. So we had Luke, Dominic, and Rachel. So one of those. So 3 artists from Forge World, and then Rachel, the commissioning artist for Black Library. chooses what helps develop or discuss and choose what goes on the front of the books, and then Dominic and Luke and that showing off the art that they could for Necromunda, which is fantastic. And we talked about this, so many times. Luke, bless him, having to do loads of weapons. We didn't have a Malevolence. We didn't have a book to show off. We couldn't have that much Heresy, so there was a lot of Necromunda stuff. Getting to see more of Dominic's kind of sketching is really cool, because sometimes when we've seen those guys at places, they're doing the more technical stuff, which is really interesting, but it's not as appealing, as it were. You know what I mean? As actual drawings of people, even if they're fake people.
You mean like when they're doing? Yeah, because I must admit, I think was it Dominic was sat next to Rachel in the studio bit?
Yes.
Was that?
It was Luke,
referring to the right people?
Luke, Dominic in the middle, Rachel. Yeah.
Yes. So I was obviously stood staring at Rachel's drawing as she was, sketching things out as she does, and it is very fulfilling watching someone put together a face.
Yeah.
If do you know what I mean? That sort of that natural sort of and it's quite mesmerising. I stood there for I think 5 minutes just staring at the screen, watching her do it, and I think she sort of stopped and went, "You're right." And I went, "Oh yeah, sorry." It's
I
lost in the moment there.
Yeah, especially when you can't.
She was sort of.
Especially when you don't have those skills. I was talking to someone after having a look at the Golden Demon stuff, and caught myself just looking at the Necromunda heads that Rachel had drawn. Almost bought one of the canvases of her stuff as well.
Her stuff. I love her stuff.
So do I.
It
big
is
time.
amazing.
And I say I hadn't seen. We don't get to see, I don't think, as much of Dominic, and maybe Rachel does more of that anyway, but when I get the new house, I'm going to have to get some bits of art from somewhere, and it's going to be so difficult to choose what to get, because I'm going to get some
There's so much good stuff. Yeah. That's the problem, isn't there?
All this new Necromunda stuff, I was like, yeah, cool, I'm going to get, there's certain of those portraits that look fantastic, the Heresy portraits, and now there's all this Necromunda stuff. And I'm like, the Escher, the guy walking the dog was just fantastic. That's one of Rachel's as well. Because I can't remember which one Caleb bought. Caleb purchased one of them. And I was like, go and get it signed. You've got to get it signed while you're here, Why would you not?
Exactly, opportunity.
Yeah. And it's great to see all that. And what's really good, and it's slightly off topic for Heresy, but the design aesthetic they've got for Necromunda is different for each gang. And so you're getting a very different, design across everything they're doing, from the guns, from the little bits they have attached to them, and then everything else. It's fantastic. It's really cool. So I
do feel as though they've got a lot of freedom with Necromunda to go a little bit more wild, a little bit more sort of. They don't have to stick to the rules quite as much. Maybe.
Well, there's so much that's not particularly codified for it, which is really useful. It was strange. I didn't really see or talk to Neil that much at this event. I don't quite know why.
Yeah, I didn't see you much either.
No, it was very strange. It was a bit of a weird event in that respect. But it was great walking around. Do you want to talk about Golden Demon a little bit?
Yeah, I can always talk about Golden Demon. So I suppose the best place to start was, obviously, there was a little bit, I would say, a little bit of worry within the community about this Golden Demon. Because of, obviously, a limited tickets, which obviously always, puts people on edge. But then there was also, I would say that the previous year, we did have some of the, I would call that the regular names of people that win a lot of demons attending. So we had, last year we had Richard Gray, Martin Waller, Andy was there, but I don't think he entered. Danny Nuttall, loads and loads of people entering into Demon. And this year it did feel as though that a lot of people either didn't have tickets or weren't going, etc. So for me, I was thinking, well, I wonder what this is going to be like. And I was very, very pleased at the quality and the turnout in the categories, because I did feel that it could have gone very much the other way. and we could have had maybe a couple of categories that were a bit empty, didn't have a lot in. But I don't know how you felt when you looked at them, but I very much felt there was plenty on show in all of the categories.
Yeah, all right, weren't they? Yeah. There was. Yeah, it all seemed to be. I must admit, there were ones in there that I think there were some people who entered, maybe who were less, knowing they weren't going to do so well. If you know what I mean, there were entries in there that were obviously people who weren't at the top level of painting, which is not a problem. I was trying to say this in a way that, again, doesn't disparage them, because maybe they were entering just to find out where they are. It was still well painted.
Yeah.
It was still probably better than I can paint, but it was very obvious. It was like, okay, those aren't going to win. Okay. But that's cool to see that you're still getting people entering. And I think some of those people were people who were like, I'm at the Weekender. I will then see if I will enter Golden Demon, which that Weekender Heresy needs. Otherwise, it will become a handful of people. So that is good.
And what I do think is good for the Golden Demon at the Heresy is there are possibly people entering the Heresy Demon that maybe wouldn't consider entering one of the other demons, because maybe they feel as though, my style of stuff might resonate a bit more, or I just feel as though there was more people entering than I thought there would be, which I thought was really good.
Yeah.
And I did think the standard was very high as well. So stuff. One of the categories that I was really concerned about was the Necromunda gang category, because I felt as though they've obviously very much dropped it in extremely late notice, and I did think to myself, well, that might be a complete waste of time, because if you only get 3 entries into a category, like auto win for everyone, then it sort of takes away the competitive nature of it, if you know what I mean. So, but we got 4 entries into that, so at least we didn't get an auto win for everyone in there. Again, was very high standard. I thought they did really well, and it was an interesting one, because I did feel, and this is not to sound too big-headed, that myself and Andy Warder were the two sort of main players vying for the sword. And Andy's piece was just absolutely amazing. I remember seeing it on Instagram. I think he dropped a few pictures of it, I think a month or two before the demon. And I remember thinking, wow, that looks absolutely amazing. And I remember him talking to me about it at a previous event, saying that he was going to do Magnus. At the time, he said he was going to do Magnus and Russ facing off against each other. And I thought, wow, that if he's doing Magnus to this standard, and I'd seen his Russ pictures as well, I thought it was going to be a pretty stunning piece. And, and it was Magnus. He did Magnus on his own. Magnus was amazing. I was really sort of impressed with how well it all came out. And, there were some great new faces in the other categories. I didn't feel as though many of them were as contested maybe as maybe the single was. Cy Davis won gold in squad. Yeah. Ken won gold in vehicle. Our friend Tokyo Ken, who flew all the way over, which was good to see.
It's so great to see someone who was so excited to win as well.
Oh God, yeah, he was. One thing I did love about the Golden Demon was the award ceremony. Was probably the most enjoyable award ceremony I think I've been to in all my demons, because there just seemed to be a lot of chanting, a lot of laughter. We all sort of having a good time with it all. It wasn't just like your usual calling out the names, everyone politely clapping while people walk up from the back of the room and go and collect their resin statuette. It was it felt a bit more lively than normal. I think that may be because I think a lot of people just assumed Andy was going to win even before we got there. So they're not worried about who's going to win. Okay, Andy's won, cool. And then you've got people collecting their first Golden Demons or things like that as well. So the friends genuinely excited for their friend to get their first demon. I think there was certainly a lot of that, which is cool. And Caleb won silver for his Emperor's Children. I think it was, Emperor's Children, which is awesome. Flew them over for that, which is really cool. But yeah, it was good fun. Really good fun. I really enjoyed it. I had a fantastic time. There were some stunning entries, that ones that, I hadn't seen much on Instagram. So when I saw them in the flesh, they looked absolutely amazing. There was, I didn't think there was much controversy. Sometimes we talk about, things that have happened and, etc. But there wasn't anything too much that jumped out. I wasn't, the one criticism I had was, the one thing I love about Heresy Weekender is the fact that we have 2 days for the demons. So you put them in on the Saturday, they photograph them on Saturday night when everyone's gone, and Sunday's over, basically all over for the judges, so they can just literally sit there and make their decisions, and there's a lot less pressure on the competition.
Sure.
On the Saturday, the one thing that annoyed me was they had everyone putting their models in, and they had it all cordoned off, which was fine. And then for the rest of the day, they had like this 2-person policy that you were only allowed 2 people to walk up to the cabinets at once. And it was very frustrating for me, and I'm sure other people, but it just felt crazy because you go to a classic demon and they're about 3 people deep, and it's crowds of people around the cabinets, and for some reason we were only allowed 2 people in the area of the cabinets at once. And I felt as though it was very much a computer says no, like somebody had said, oh no, yeah, just don't allow too many people in there at once. And they just had set this rule, and it just didn't make any sense. It was really quite frustrating. So maybe they can improve that next year.
Yeah, I saw them putting the thing out and thought, oh, they're blocking everyone from going in. And I was like, there's people in there. That's a bit strange. Okay, whatever. I walked away, came back to look at them. I was about the 6th person in that little bit, and then went away, and then came back to look at them another good time, and there was about 5 people in there again. And I was like, you told me there was a 2-person policy. I was like, oh, was there? Okay, fine.
There seemed to be 2 people running that area, and one of them was a bit regimented on 2 people at once at maximum, and the other person didn't really care. So as that person would go off for a break and it would fill up with people, that person would then come back and say, oh no, please, you need to leave, you only 2 people at once. Yeah. And it just seemed a bit farcical, really. It was one of those ones where maybe someone set a rule but then hasn't had the forethought to say, no, that's fine, don't worry about it, sort of thing, and told everyone to sort of stand down. But it was fine, it was the good thing is you do get a good chance to have a good look at all the models. It's not too much of a rush, but the cabinet lighting, as always, was absolutely abysmal. Yeah, so it was a real pain to see everything.
Some other lights around it. But anyway, what were your views on the weekend as a whole?
I really enjoyed it. I was a little bit concerned before I went that it was going to be maybe not as good as previous years. I mean, there's always this complaint, isn't there? It wasn't as good as this year. It wasn't as good as that year. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a great time. I felt as though the Necromunda actually did benefit the Weekender more than I thought it would. So that was a nice, pleasant surprise. I felt that there's certain tweaks they made which worked well. Things like the retail area seemed a little bit more organised with the tills all in one area. And little bits and pieces like that. I had a great time, great to meet up with people, and I think I'd still, if they announced the tickets for, say, next year, I think I'd be rushing out to go and get them again. I don't think I would be too concerned about, shall I go, shall I not go, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so, Friday night being open, having Dan there was handy. They'd had the meeting, the Heresy meeting, so they held Dan on to do some signing, which was cool. People purchasing their models. Got to have a system. They did it apparently on the Sunday for the Necromunda stuff. They were actually punching tickets or marking tickets somehow. They need to do that if you're only selling. I think apparently they had less Valdors than there were people going to be there. So that needs to be kind of checked. You can't stop someone like me buying the model and then giving it to you because you want to. That you can't stop that. That's fair enough. But you can stop me buying 5.
Yes, I think there was a complaint that someone had bought like 5 or 6 or something, and then whacked them all on eBay.
They should be on that, and that should be a simple system as having, a hole punch or a place on the card to mark for each model that you want or book that you want to buy. The only problem is they might have to print their tickets earlier than they know what models, but they could just print generic ones. You know, they could just have 3 areas and do that.
It wouldn't be hard, yeah. You just have 3 numbered boxes and
just have a hole punch.
1 for Dawn, box 2 for Valdor.
Yeah, exactly. There are ways to do that, or even have a card you redeem. You know, everyone gets a single card in their bag for each model. Here's my Valdor. So yeah, but you know, it was better organised. Having the Friday does alleviate some of the issues on the Saturday, which is good. There's still a big queue on the Saturday. The nature of the hotel means they want the queuing to occur behind the tills from the front door, which meant, again, that when I came down and was doing stuff, I was like, oh, cool, everyone must have got it, and registered and then realised the queue was there. Same as last year. Don't know if they can stop that, but maybe a notice.
I don't know how many times you can use that excuse that you didn't know.
I just didn't even look. I was like, oh, cool, there's no one here. Brilliant. Perfect. Didn't realise they'd held off. In terms of the Saturday, so I have no problems, actually, with GW, with Warhammer Community being one of the first places that puts up photos of new models. They didn't actually put up every single new model or new picture, which is good. I think that's a good thing, that some of it's left for, you know, people to report on and for people who are there to get a good view. I haven't got a problem with that at all. What I have got a problem with is the only person I knew who knew about it only found out because he was talking to a member of staff who just happened to mention that you're not going to see any models until they're shown off in the model seminar. And I'm like, that could have been open information right at the start somewhere, because I've missed a whole hour-long seminar out of the 8, maybe, that there are. I've missed it because of that, and I made that decision to do that for a reason.
I must admit, that was a shock to me, because I remember thinking, right, the first thing I'm doing is going in the studio. That's going to be, you know, that's route 1. And then when we piled in there, and I think we walked past all the cabinets, so I went, hold on a second, there's nothing in these.
There's an air of disappointment around that room at the time. And then missing out. So they made the 2 seminar rooms smaller so they can make the main seminar room bigger, because they've had issues with having... You know, there's a reason they do 2 brand new, the new Forge World stuff. It's because, you know, the event almost got shut down. We had to pull people out of it. So cool, they made that room bigger. But by making that room bigger, that second new model seminar only had 15 people in it, which just proves that they didn't need to run 2, and they could have moved that forum into the other bit. Or, if they want to run 2, keep it the same size as it used to be and allow those other 2 rooms to be a bit bigger. You know, that's something that hindsight helps with, but it was so frustrating at the time. And halfway through Saturday, I was like, I don't know if I'm coming next year. I was like, I've basically done very little on the Saturday. I go up and talk to Sam Egan, you know, about Dawn. Cool. You know, that was out because we actually see it. But people like Will Hayes, I'm like, okay, cool. You know, what new you got to show me? Oh, nothing. Oh, okay. How you doing? You know, how's the family? How's work? Because I've already talked to him about the models he's done, you know? And on reflection, as I was sitting there thinking, you know, calming down, I was like, well, maybe it's just because I come to these all the time. Maybe people who've never been to one before don't even notice that. And that's fair enough. And that's potentially something I have to think about. You know, do I come again having been to all of them? But to be fair, by Saturday night, the weekend had improved. By the end of Sunday, I was like, you know what? It's not been bad. Necromunda did help this year. However, there was a lot of it. And I'm like, you know, as a Heresy and Necromunda weekender, I don't know. And I don't know if it will stay that way. I think it might just be a product of what's happened this year. And I think next year you might go back to being a Heresy Weekender. But I could also see it actually keeping something with it, because you would need a fair amount to fill it up. And I don't know if Black Library are going to be able to fill up that much of it with the way that they talk about how far in advance they talk about their books and things.
Well, because that used to be the thing, didn't it? You used to be, in the early days, it was pretty much 50% Black Library, 50% Forge World and Games, wasn't it? And as we get closer to the end of the books, I suppose that becomes harder to do.
Well, yes and no. It's more about the way they controlling information again. With the limit of, we saw a lot of stuff, to be fair, at this Weekender.
I thought we did as well, yeah.
Talking about new models, we saw a lot of stuff. How much, it's like, do they have enough to talk about for 2 days just as Heresy anymore? Have they had since the third one? Really? Because the last two have been fairly lackluster for, various reasons. Not to say they were bad, but they were, they didn't meet expectation. And I think that helped, in a little way, that helped this one. People weren't sure what to expect, particularly with Necromunda being there. And I think everyone lowered their expectations before going, which means that, they're easier to surpass. But as I say, by the end of it, I was like, yeah, cool, I'll come next year. I'll get my ticket and I'll come. It was fun. It was good to meet people. It was good to chat. I missed one of the seminars Sunday, just sitting chatting to Raji and a couple of other people and going through bits and pieces. But it's for me, it's things like that art seminar. Once I've seen the new stuff, yeah, there's always information you can learn, but I've sat in so many of them now. Okay, maybe I have to just review the way I attend the Heresy Weekender.
Yeah, that's the problem I find, is that I've spoken to so many designers about things. I don't have anything to really talk to them about.
Yeah, except on a personal level, because you start to get to know them.
So it becomes tricky for me. Like I love talking to the heavy metal painters and things and the judges when they're there, because I'm talking about my passion, which is the painting. But I find that hard to talk about with. If I'm talking to Rachel about her drawing, I've asked all those questions, so I don't really have much else to add.
Yeah, because we're laymen when it comes to that. You're absolutely right, and I'm sure there are people listening to this going, "Well, don't go next year, and there'll be more tickets for other people."
I'm
sure that's a valid statement because of the podcast. Partly because it's a chance to meet up with those people who it's going to get harder and harder for me now to meet them as often as I used to. So it's a good place to do that as well. And I really enjoy it. So it was a very interesting weekend for me on that front. And yeah, thankfully it got better. I kind of don't mind the way they did the releases. I just think Forge World in general, and Games Workshop to a point, need to communicate better. Some of the descriptions, maybe they weren't really fully sure what they were going to talk about when they kind of made their programs, but they could be more kind of they could be more direct in what that hour is going to talk about. They could have told us right at the start you won't see any more new models until the end of the new model seminar.
Which I must admit, I like that. Well, I like the fact that when I sat in that seminar, every model that came up on the screen, bar the few bits that were for sale on the front stand, was all like really exciting to see. And wow, look at that! It felt very reminiscent of the first couple of years, where you get a big cheer when a new model came up.
It was great. And I wasn't in the seminar because I didn't want to be really warm again. So I was off talking to Sam about the Primarchs. As I say, I might have said this in the first part, I forget. But the photos started coming through, and I'm like, oh, cool, talking to Sam about like bits and pieces. And then I see Giuseppe putting the termite into into the glass cabinet, and I'm like, oh yeah, see you, Sam. I'm going to go and look at all the new cool stuff, and all of a sudden this model split, and then some of the stuff, and I know
that's quite well organised when you think about it. Do you think they got
No, it
told
wasn't
when
well
you hear the
organised.
cheers start putting stuff out?
No, he was looking online.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. Maybe there was a system, but I know for at least one of them he saw someone post a picture up online. And then some of the stuff was Sunday only as well. And that's fine, that's cool. Maybe they could stagger it out a little bit more. Maybe have something in there at the start. Who knows? That's something they can work on. But the communication about what they're doing could be better. I think the programs came out too late. I think tickets could have been released earlier. Caleb travelled from west coast of America. That's a lot of money. And when you leave, when did the tickets go on sale? December?
Yes,
late November, early December. So 3 months, less than 3 months. It needs to be more time than that. I travel from, even for me, I need to book off time for holiday, and I'm 4.5 hours drive away. When you need to book flights, if you want to come, people want to come from Australia to this thing. It's a big event. 3 months out doesn't give you a great choice of airplane tickets to get. They know when the event's going to happen. Even 4 or 5 months would make a big difference. Whether that ever changes, I think they should be doing it for that. The Black Library Weekender, all of those big events tickets should go on sale earlier than they do. But we've seen with Warhammer Fest, they've only just gone on sale. That's 3 months out. Maybe that will never change. But I think it should. They should release dates earlier as well, even before tickets.
Yes, so you can get those things planned, can't you?
Yeah, you can maybe... some places at work will let you provisionally book your holiday, Some won't, some will. But, they get... It's hard, particularly with things like that, because the hotel might book up. People will book up the hotel and then book their tickets. But people need to plan these things. And we know roughly when it's going to be. And there's this frustration as you're waiting. You're like, when's the weekender? I'm trying to plan stuff around it. When is it?
Even harder, I suppose, you're trying to plan actual events if you want to run your own tournament.
Yeah, big time. We had a nightmare for Blood and Glory, trying to find out when the Black Library Weekender was going to happen, because someone had heard rumours it was going to be the same weekend as that, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to run Blood and Glory then, but I need to know. Can someone let me know? And I'm someone who signed NDAs, so I can't get on here, and if they told me I wouldn't be able to come on here and tell anyone, fair enough. They still don't want to tell me, and that's fine, but actually it does make planning stuff a lot different. People are talking about, there's so many events going on, heresy events at the moment. You don't want to plan your heresy event in Derby. You don't want to plan that the same weekend as the weekender, when some of your audience who would definitely be there are going to be 5 miles up the road. So little things like that, I still think they could get a lot better. I think in terms of the way they run the seminars, I think it was better than it has been. I think the Black Library guys are better at comparing seminars than the Forge World guys have been. Personally, that's a personal opinion. People would disagree with me on that one. I do think that could be a little bit smoother. But in general, it was a good weekend. Once I got past the frustration, and that was mainly what it was. But I was flipping livid for 10, 15 minutes, because it just felt like it didn't help that I'd spent a lot of money this time, and it is a lot of money. That's a hotel. The Belfry Hotel is not cheap. It's good, but it's not cheap. You're kind of stuck out in the middle of nowhere for food, so you're limited on options for that. The ticket itself, and then when you feel like you're not getting a lot back for it, which at the start it did, it was like, this is not good.
And you took the missus.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
and you had to put her in for treatments.
You know, and that's an extra expense, and that's why it's a frustration, you know, because actually once you calm down, you're like, okay, right, well, yes, I've spent a lot of money on this, and I've helped organise getting other people there as well. You know, I've spent time doing that, but actually, overall, it was one of those moments. Had it not improved, it would be a different story. And you know what? Some people went into those Necromunda seminars that I missed and came out saying they were some of the best stuff they did all weekend. And that kind of like grates a little bit because I could have been in there, you know?
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, that's the weird thing for me. I remember sitting in the Future of Necromunda seminar just mainly because of thinking, well, what am I going to do now? Oh, sorry, I'll go to this seminar. And I really enjoyed it. It was one of my favourite seminars. But, you know... I suppose that's just the nature of it, isn't it? That's just the nature of sometimes the things you least expect then surprise you, whereas the ones that you are really desperate to see and find out about sometimes let you down because you've got too much ride on it.
There is a little bit of that. And to be fair, the Specialist Games crew, all of them, pretty good guys, know what they're talking about, entertaining, informative as well, which helps. And I know, like, what I've just said is, you know, sounds quite negative, and at that split point in time, it was for half an hour. However, I was talking to another guy who had similar feelings actually at that point. Maybe I do bring an army next time, just in case. Maybe something else. You know?
That was one area that I thought was underutilised. Actually, the gaming area didn't seem very busy.
I don't want to go there to game. I want to go there to, you know, get the information, you know, not like purely from the sense of doing this, but to find out as much as I can personally as well, but also to meet people and hang out. I'd rather spend my time in the bar, generally, talking to people who travel from around the world to come, or meet up with people I haven't spoken. I hardly spoke to Miles all weekend. David Brains, saw him for like 2 seconds. Yeah, there was a lot of people I didn't get to talk to at this one, and you know, that's cool because actually I was talking to other people.
I had people saying to me, "Oh, are you not sitting with Greg, talking to Greg?" I went, "You do know I have to talk to Greg all the time."
Absolutely, and I was quite glad you weren't there. So, you know, but yeah, lots of stuff like that. So it was a good weekend. Again, that's what I want to say. For all those, for all the issues I had with it, there weren't that many really. But they were all at the same time, which didn't help. It was a good weekend. But blimey, we have waffled on. We'll leave. Yeah, I think we can leave that there. You haven't got anything final you want to say before we go and wrap up?
No, not
cool. All right, we'll leave that there and we'll come back and wrap up. Well, that's another episode, as I say, and Michael will come on another one. Turns out it's probably quite good because we ended up talking quite a lot in that last segment. But we're towards the end of the show. Just wanted to mention, we talked about it right at the front, I believe, the issues at the LVO and the sports, the sporting nature in which Alex, whatever his name is, took a defeat, and the story that Games Workshop have stepped up. So you can go to Games Workshop, you can go to the community page, isn't it? It's on there. And
yes.
You can find details, brief outline of the fact that Alex took a defeat in a very sporting manner, and one of the guys who headed up Riot Games offered $5,000 to him for the way he did so, which he then donated, said to donate immediately to the children's hospital that his girlfriend works at. And he even got his boss to donate another $5,000. So they were going to receive $10,000, which is amazing, which is really cool. And that guy deserves a lot of credit for doing that. Games Workshop have now stepped up and they're going to donate $5,000 for this community sports award thing I can't remember what they called it now. Should have double checked. But I think that's really awesome, don't you?
Yeah, I thought it was. Well, obviously we spoke about it before, and that was pretty cool anyway. And I like the fact that GW are supporting that as well. It sort of is reaffirming that sort of how the spirit of the games should be played and things like that. I think it's a really, really cool move.
Yeah, Alex Fennell. So yeah, essentially something happened which he could have made a song and a dance about, and he just accepted that his opponent was going to play a certain thing a certain way, and just got on with it in the best way he could. So they've got this $5,000 that they're going to be contributing. And they're also, so let me read the last bit. In fact, we've realised we really ought to do more to reward sporting play. We're now working on plans for an annual Most Sporting Award. We'll hopefully have something more to tell you this summer, which I think is really good. Maybe not a single sporting award, or maybe I'd like to have seen something like the Community Heroes thing, where a number of people get mentioned, potentially.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Maybe that's, picking one person out could be quite interesting, but actually having a list of 5 or 6, there's a lot of games of Warhammer go on in various places, so there's potential for maybe more than that. But it depends how they're going to do it. But we will keep an eye on that, I think. And then, of course, the other thing that also came out today was if you play Custodes and you also play 40k, you can port a load of stuff over, which we talked very briefly about. But go check out again the community page for the beta test rules, and it's got the email on there and the information they're asked for if you wish to feedback on that. So might be something you want to jump in on. I think it'd be pretty cool. And Warhammer Fest tickets are up. I can't go. You going to go?
Yes, bought my tickets.
Yeah.
Well, I bought a ticket for me and my son as well. So I've asked him if he would like to come, and he said yes initially, and his mother said maybe. So I bought a ticket anyway.
That's just for the Sunday, is it?
That's just for the Sunday, yes.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah,
there should be some Golden Demon clarifications coming out in the next day or so, and I'm hoping that because there was some talk that we mentioned about maybe making the classic demon a 2-day demon.
Right, okay.
A bit like, because we discussed that the issues they had, we're trying to get it all judged in the tight time frame.
It's huge.
And Max did say, he said, like, well, we'll look at it. There's clarifications coming out in the day or so. I had a quick chat with him on Facebook. He was asking me about some guideline feedback of anything that, frequently asked questions about demon. So I was sort of feeding in things that I know that people always ask.
Sure.
And he said, yeah, that's all covered in the new guidelines, so that's cool. And then hopefully they'll be out in a day or so.
Be interesting to make it a 2-day when there's nothing going on. Like, it all shuts down at 5 or 6 or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, the way I thought it could be quite cool would be that obviously it becomes a bit of an issue that people would then need a weekend ticket.
Yeah.
But the way I looked at it was what maybe they could do is you put your models in on the Saturday. They do the first cut on Saturday, and then if you get through to the first cut, they give you a free ticket for the Sunday or something, so that you can then come back or do something.
People have to plan around kids and things anyway. So
yeah, it's tricky, but I think the problem is with the classic demon is there are so many entries. They might need to look at something or finding some way of also giving them more time to judge, because it is so tight when they do a classic demon.
Yeah. I agree that something. Maybe they go back to it's really hard to do, because you want to keep it that anyone can enter on the day. I think having qualifications is a possible thing you could do, but then people have to go to somewhere else to then qualify. You can't just fly over for one event if you're Italian, say, and then to the classic. Yes. So that is difficult. Problem with giving away free tickets is they then have to control numbers. So if you don't, like, some people might go, well, I'm not going to win anyway, I'm not coming back. I just wanted to see if I got through, it's tricky. It's going to be a tricky decision for them. I think in the end, I don't think a lot will change. this year.
Yeah, I think they'll definitely keep it as a 1 day,
Maybe
and then
move it
if
to
they
the
were
Saturday.
to move to a 2 day, it would have to be like a very thought out long term plan.
The only thing is the Saturday does have a couple of hours more than the Sunday, and they don't have to pack everything up. So it might be that they could move it to the Saturday and then hold some different stuff back for the Sunday. That could be an option.
Maybe.
And not this year. I wouldn't do it this year because I think that needs to be communicated beforehand. And do we know the model they're using for the heavier metal?
Yes, that was announced at the what was the one before Heresy Demon, the one they did. I don't remember 40k Demon in November.
Yeah.
It's the Sigmarite guy out of the what's it called? Not Shadespire, the other game. Silver Tower.
Silver Tower, yeah.
Yes, you know the dude with the shield and the sword.
The Stormcast champion from
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, cool. Okay, that's good. I won't be there. I'll be playing Age of Sigmar down on the south coast all weekend for that one. But enjoy that. I noticed that there aren't as many tournaments announced there as there have been. No Heresy tournament there. No.
Ah, interesting. I didn't notice that because I didn't know if there was any missing.
I don't even think there was a 40k tournament. I think it was an Age of Sigmar, Blood Bowl, and something else, but I could be wrong. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. I still think they're trying to work out exactly the best way to run Warhammer Fest, and that's tricky. But yeah, fair play to them. Cool. And I think we're pretty much done. So we'll move on to the all the usuals. You can follow us at Imperial_Truth on Twitter, or at Child of Fang, or at Neil Paints.
At Neil Paints on virtually everything.
Yeah, except he only posts on Instagram every now and then, rather than actually visiting anywhere else. If you have any feedback, if you have any questions, if you have any info you want to know or want to pass on, you can email Greg at theimperialtruth.com.
And I'm Neil at theimperialtruth.com.
And if you want to support the show, you can head over to Patreon and you can give us a tip for what we do here from however much you want to. And thank you again to everyone that does that. If you want to help the show and you don't want to give any money, that's completely understandable. Just go and tell someone to listen to the show. Tell them to try it out. They might not like it, but you never know. They might like it. And if you want a very brief appearance from me on the Boys of the Golden Throne, the latest podcast, they grabbed me at Adepticon. They were running the narrative event there. So AJ and went on with a couple of the boys doing that. It's a not safe for work podcast. That episode's not too bad. But if you are one of those listeners who
did your presence sort of tone them down a bit?
No, just generally the episode wasn't too bad compared to some of them. But yeah, if you're the kind of person who listens in the car, I can't guarantee. Having listened to it, I can't remember anything too explicit, but I'm sure there is some stuff in there. So yeah, if you listen with the kids around, it might not be the best thing to listen to. But I'm on there. It's their kind of interview segment from the LVO, so it's quite entertaining. But that's cool. And I think, frankly, that's about it. Is there anything you want to add before we leave, Neil?
No, nothing from me.
Awesome. You have been listening to The Imperial Truth.